At lucky number 5 is Joliet Correctional Center. The Joliet Correctional Center, established in Joliet, Illinois in 1858, holds a storied past that is as captivating as it is haunting. This historic penitentiary served as a house of horrors for over 150 years, housing some of the state's most notorious criminals. Within its imposing stone walls lie a rich history of many eerie and disturbing tales. But the most chilling of these tales is that of the murder of the warden's wife in 1915. Odette Allen, better known simply as the warden's wife, was an aspiring singer before marrying her husband, Warden Ned Allen. The marriage would have her move from her home in Los Angeles to living in the Joliet Correctional Center with her betrothed. Odette was incredibly popular among the inmates. She was known to be a kind and compassionate woman who tried to make the lives of the prisoners a little more bearable by offering them small acts of kindness, such as providing treats or lending a listening ear to their troubles. The inmates would call her things like the Good Angel and the Little Mother at the Big Stir, out of admiration for her benevolence. The inmates would often act as servants to her and the warden, as an alternative to hard prison labor. In June of 1915, the warden went to Chicago to meet with politicians about the building of a new prison. Odette didn't join her husband because the dresses she wanted to wear weren't yet ready. One morning, Odette asked for the help of Joe Campbell, also known as Chicken Joe, a prisoner who had been convicted of murder at the age of 29. He was selected to be Odette's personal servant because of his great behavior and his healthy relationship with her and the warden. He was due for parole the next week, and Odette was going to testify for him at his hearing. Sounds like life was looking up for Chicken Joe, but what happened next would tragically bring all these good things to ruin for the young prisoner. The morning of her death, Odette asked Joe to refill her water bottle, go grab her coffee and a newspaper, and to walk her dog. To this, Joe obliged. But then, an hour later, he would return to the house with smoke coming from Odette's bedroom window. Firefighters were quick to the scene, but were not fast enough, as once they extinguished the flames, Odette's charred body was already laying still on the bed. Upon investigation, they discovered that Odette was SA'd and killed before the bed was set on fire, and suspicions immediately turned to Chicken Joe. Joe was the subject of much scrutiny from police, Illinois citizens, and even fellow prisoners. Even after adamantly pleading innocence, Joe was sentenced to death by the court, but his sentence was changed to life in prison at the last second by a sympathetic governor who believed his story. After the tragedy, strange things started happening in the prison. Many inmates and guards would report seeing or hearing Odette still wandering the halls. There have also been some cases of hearing her singing in the nearby prison cemetery. One night in the 1930s, about 5,000 people went to the cemetery armed in an attempt to vanquish the apparition, but no one could find her anywhere. Amidst the chaos, a dozen people went missing, supposed victims of the ghost. Which to me is crazy. Like, at what point are you so scared of a ghost you need 5,000 people just to get rid of it? And they still didn't even find her. Just give up at that point, guys, come on. Anyway, it is said that Odette remains in the prison in order to protect her boys, the prisoners who were inspired by her kindness and honored her after death through their good behavior. Any visitor that would try to disturb her peace would incur the poltergeist's wrath and suddenly disappear. If you were to visit the prison today, which closed in 2002 and was turned into a historical site, there's still a good chance you might come across Odette's ghost, still wandering and singing. Next up at number 4 is the Congress Plaza Hotel. Constructed in 1893 as part of the World's Columbian Exposition, the Congress Plaza Hotel has welcomed countless guests over the years, including prominent figures such as presidents, celebrities, and even infamous gangsters. Its iconic location overlooking Grant Park and Lake Michigan has made it a popular choice for visitors seeking a taste of vintage luxury. But it is the hotel's dark past and ghostly residents that have set it truly apart. One of the most well-known ghosts said to haunt the hotel is that of a ghostly presence known as the Shadow Man. His story dates back to 1900, when Captain Louis Ostheim, a war veteran haunted by the horrors of the Spanish-American War, sought refuge at the hotel on the eve of his wedding. The captain would often experience PTSD-induced night terrors and suffer from extreme anxiety and paranoia. The night of his death, he awoke suddenly after being consumed by a brutal episode. In his disoriented state, he would search for solace or an escape from his inner demons, and tragically, he took his own life. Ever since that fateful night, the spirit of Captain Ostheim has been seen walking through the Congress Plaza Hotel, appearing as a shadowy figure gliding through the halls with a haunting aura. Guests and staff have reported encountering the Shadow Man on multiple occasions, his spectral form silently following their footsteps, as if seeking some elusive connection or unfinished business. Those unlucky enough to meet the Shadow Man's gaze would begin feeling greatly distressed and having night terrors of their own, some meeting the same fate as him after the fact. As the years have passed, the legend of the Shadow Man has become deeply ingrained in the history of the Congress Plaza Hotel, adding to its reputation as one of Illinois' most haunted locations. The spirit's enigmatic presence, coupled with the tragic circumstances that led to his lingering existence, makes encounters with the Shadow Man as eerie and thought-provoking as they are dangerous. Do any of you guys see any ghosts while staying in a hotel? Leave a comment, because I feel like these days every hotel on the planet is haunted. Next, at number 3, is the Englewood Post Office. H.H. Holmes, no relation to Sherlock, was a deceptive figure who gained infamy in the late 19th century as one of America's first documented serial killers. Operating during the time of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Holmes constructed a nightmarish building with a name I'm not even allowed to say on YouTube. But for the sake of brevity, I'll call it Death Castle. Officially named the Holmes Castle or the World's Fair Hotel, Death Castle was a 3-story building located on the corner of 63rd and Wallace Street in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago. From the outside, it looked the same as any other ordinary commercial building, complete with shops and apartments. However, its true purpose was far more sinister. Inside the castle, Holmes had constructed a labyrinth of secret passages, hidden staircases, and windowless rooms designed for his nefarious deeds. He used his magnetic charm to lure and manipulate unsuspecting victims, often young women, and visitors to the World's Fair into his deadly lair. The castle featured soundproof rooms, gas chambers, trap doors, and a chilling basement equipped with dissection tables and vats of acid. Holmes would typically seduce and swindle his victims before leading them to their deaths. Many were asphyxiated with gas, mutilated, tormented both psychologically and physically, and killed in various gruesome ways. Once they were deceased, Holmes would dispose of their bodies through the building's hidden chutes, transporting them to the basement for disposal. His exact number of victims remains a mystery, but it is believed he may have killed anywhere from 20 to 200 people during his spree. His sinister acts continued undetected for years, aided by his ability to change aliases frequently, making it difficult for authorities to track him down. Holmes's reign of terror finally came to an end when he was arrested in 1894 for an unrelated insurance fraud scheme. That castle didn't pay for itself, I guess. As investigators delved into his background, they began uncovering evidence for his horrifying crimes. On May 7th, 1986, H.H. Holmes was executed. Before his death, he confessed to 27 killings, but hinted at a much higher body count. Afterwards, the infamous Death Castle was later destroyed by a mysterious fire, and a post office was built atop the ruins. Within the Englewood post office, it is said that you can still hear the many screams of Holmes's victims. And there have been reports of those who dared venture to the basement, which survived the fire, and you can still see Holmes killing one of his 200 victims, a phantom that echoes the terrifying events that occurred over a century ago. I just got the chills. Next up, at number 2, is a short one. Resurrection Cemetery. Located in Justice, Illinois, the Resurrection Cemetery holds what it is known to be Illinois' most famous ghost, known only as Resurrection Mary. The story goes that Mary was a vibrant and lively dancer who attended the dance hall in the 1930s. One fateful night, she left the hall after an argument with her partner and decided to walk home alone along Archer Avenue. Tragically, Mary was struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver while walking along the desolate road. Since then, motorists driving along the street will often see Mary's ghost walking along the road wearing a white gown and dancing shoes. In some cases, Mary will appear as a hitchhiker, but by the time the car reaches Resurrection Cemetery, she would suddenly vanish, occasionally taking the driver with her. Remember guys, don't pick up mysterious, ghostly women off the side of the road. It's called stranger danger, and we should all know it by now. Moving on to number 1 is Menno State Mental Hospital. Established in Menno, Illinois in 1930, the Menno State Mental Hospital initially served as a psychiatric facility for mentally ill and developmentally disabled patients, offering them treatment and care. However, over the years, the hospital's conditions deteriorated, leading to allegations of beatings, neglect, and the mistreatment of its vulnerable inhabitants. These inhumane conditions only worsened as time passed, with tales of neglect, experimentation, and even deaths due to inadequate medical attention began to spread, shrouding the institution and its reputation in darkness and sorrow. The hospital was at its worst when 384 patients and staff came down with typhoid fever in 1939 in an incident referred to as the Menno Madness. The director of the hospital mistook the affliction to be nothing more than a case of diarrhea, but when patients and staff began dying, panic set in. Patients banging on windows, orderlies going missing, doctors deliberately injuring their patients. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Those who died during the Menno madness would later haunt the abandoned asylum after its closure in 1985. Those who visited the old hospital would report seeing patients and doctors alike scurrying about the abandoned halls, but it was those who ventured into the tunnels beneath the hospital that were in real danger. Paranormal investigators have gone down into the tunnels in hopes of finding the rumored ghosts, but are met with a much more sinister presence. It is said that the malevolent doctors who would mistreat their patients wander the complex of tunnels, hoping to release their rage upon anyone stupid enough to enter their domain. What was once a place that healed was now a place that harmed, enthralling thrill seekers to see the mad doctors for themselves, only to pay an unfortunate price. After the repeated disappearances of ghost hunters, urban explorers, vandals, and the like, the building was demolished by Wrecking Ball in 2015 to discourage anyone from entering the haunted grounds.
Kicking us off at number 5, we have the St. Louis Cemetery number 1. The first of 3 Roman Catholic cemeteries in New Orleans, this is a legendary site for ghost spotting, although you'll need a vetted tour guide to get in. Break this rule and who knows what kind of curse you'll incur. The cemetery is full of above ground tombs, which some refer to as cities of the dead. These vaults are largely from the 18th and 19th centuries, although some of the graves date back to early 1700s. Of course, with all sorts of above ground burials, one would expect to see plenty of ghosts here. Visitors claim to see manifestations of ghosts walking around, and an abundance of amateur photographers claim to have captured ghost orbs on film. Digital too. Some ghosts are more famous than others, but at the St. Louis Cemetery number 1, none are as well renowned as Mary Laveau. The voodoo queen of New Orleans, Laveau made a name for herself through fortune telling, occult studies, and herbal medicines. These days, gawkers claim to see her floating through the cemetery where she's buried, wearing her signature bright colored clothing and white turban. Guests have reported being scratched, pinched, shoved, or even coming down with sudden unexplainable illnesses after seeing her ghost. For many years, followers of the occult would visit her tomb and mark it with 3 X's, but this led to more severe vandalism and it has been refurbished since. Laveau isn't the only ghost to roam the graves, but she is definitely the most well known. Just watch your back if you choose to visit and stick with the tour guide. Next up at number 4, the Hanging Jail. The Gothic Jail of De Ridder was built in 1915. Anything Gothic has a higher chance of being haunted, it's just how architecture works. That's why the Notre Dame is so full of ghosts. That and the whole Cloud Frollo situation. Spirit appreciators in the know believe that the jail is haunted by 2 men hung for the slaying of a taxi driver. Joe Genna and Moulton Brasseau hired a taxi driver late one night and told him to drive. For reasons still up in the air, they killed him. Not knowing what to do with the body, the 2 men dumped it in the old Pickering Mill pond and ran off into the night. Maybe they drove off. I wonder if they took the cab. The body was found and traced back to the 2 would-be on-the-run murderers, and such they were convicted and then hung from the 3rd floor gallows. The interesting thing about the gallows though is that a spiral staircase circles around the noose. So there's a vertigo-inducing set of stairs surrounding the ominously hanging noose. Definitely a ghost creator if I've ever seen one. In addition to this lovely feature, there's also an underground tunnel connecting the jail to the next door courthouse. That is a tunnel you would not want to find yourself in after hours. Who knows what kind of crooked-necked wailing ghosts you find down there. Of course, there are plenty of people who claim to have captured photos of the ill-fated duo along with many other unlucky lawbreakers. Just remember kids, if you want to be a ghost, constantly do things that you'll regret. That way, you'll have all sorts of reasons to stick around for the afterlife. Coming in at number 3, we have the Duen Orleans Hotel. What was once a bordello is now a very popular hotel and bar. Jilted lovers, recovering soldiers, mistreated women, they all have a chance to haunt this New Orleans landmark. Of all the stories, there are 4 that tend to come up no matter who you ask. The first is that of a lost bride, thought to be the spirit of a young woman named Millie. She was working for the bar as a courtesan when she met a dapper young man and they decided to get married. However, on the morning of the wedding, Millie's groom-to-be was shot dead in a gambling dispute. Distraught, Millie waited for days for her fiancé to show up and never took her wedding dress off. For years, she would wear the white dress around the bar, hoping that someday he would show up. Now her ghost wanders the hotel in her dress, waiting for her love. Another classic story is that of the dancing girl. A young teen has been seen dancing around in the ballroom. Many a drunk guest has claimed that a young girl helped them to their room, all the while dancing as if she were floating on air. There's also the tale of the Rebel, a ghost dressed in a dark Confederate uniform. While no battles took place in New Orleans, plenty of wounded soldiers would end up in the city for rest and recovery, and maybe a little bit of time at the bordello. This ghost has been seen pacing the outer courtyard, earning the nickname the Worried General. And of course, the bar itself, known as May's Place, is full to the brim with ghosts. Employees claim to have seen all sorts of unexplainable stuff, from glasses falling down from high shelves to locked doors opening up on their own to brochures swirling around like fall leaves. If you're looking for a haunted overnight stay, the Dauphine Orleans is probably your best bet. Don't go paying any of the ghosts for services though, you probably won't get what you're expecting. Coming in at number 2, Myrtles Plantation. Built in the late 1700s, this is considered by some to be one of America's most haunted homes. Made extra legendary by the multiple photographs taken featuring ghosts, you'd be hard pressed to find an ectoplasm enthusiast who hasn't heard of young Chloe. Chloe was a young slave punished for eavesdropping on the family. She took her revenge later on in the form of a poisoned birthday cake. It was served up to the owners of the house, and within 3 hours, 3 people were dead. Apparently that wasn't enough revenge for one lifetime though, as Chloe is still said to haunt the plantation. 2 different pictures have been taken with apparent ghostly qualities to them. One is a photo of the facade of the house, and if you look carefully in the corner, a ghostly visage can be seen. Another is of 2 tourists taking a selfie in front of a window, and Chloe can be seen peering out from in front of the curtains. While famous, some folks claim that they could be doctored. What do you think? After the Chloe incident, many later owners suffered death and murder tragedies while living at the house. Their ghosts have also been seen roaming the grounds. These days, most of the scary stuff is directly ghost related, so I don't know if it's still dangerous or just a spooky tourist attraction. Maybe the spirits like the attention they're getting from the public and would rather not kill anyone else. And finally at number 1, the Lalaurie Mansion. Back in the 1830s, the Lalaurie family was extremely well-to-do, especially Delphine Lalaurie. She was a well-respected member of society and known for throwing lavish parties. All was well and everyone had their fun until disaster struck. A fire swept through the building, burning much of it to the ground. Among the rubble, firefighters found the bodies of chained and tortured slaves in a hidden chamber. It appears that Delphine would perform unnecessary surgery on these poor helpless folks too. By the time all this was figured out, the Lalauries had fled the country, never to be seen again. With no way for justice to be served, the souls of the people held here remained, looking for revenge. Pretty much all future owners of the property quickly left after moving in. The ghosts haunting the walls are pretty aggressive too, with many people reporting bizarre physical assaults by forces unseen. Today, ghost hunters say that it's the most haunted house in the French Quarter. Historians dispute this, but that's not going to stop the phantom fans from traveling to the Haunted Mansion.
In at number 5 we have Palmer House Hotel. This hotel is not only considered the most haunted place in Minnesota, but to some it's considered the most haunted place in America. Located in Sauk Center, the hotel has been visited by paranormal activity investigators from across the country. Recently, the ghost hunter from the travel channel Ghost Adventures even investigated the hotel. A brothel that went by the name of the Sauk Center House occupied the current grounds of the Palmer Hotel, but the Sauk Center House burned down in 1900, and the Palmer was built in its place the following year. The Palmer Hotel was established in 1901 and is notorious for its permanent ghost residence. The most reported ghost in the hotel is named Lucy, who resides in room 17. Legend has it that Lucy was an adult worker that frequented the past building of the Sauk Center House. Though Lucy endured a terrible accident of losing her life at the hands of one of her clients. Even though this happened in the building, the Palmer Hotel can't seem to get rid of the spirit of Lucy. The ghost of Lucy is said to dislike men by slamming the room door of male guests. Some reports her slamming the room door so hard it rattles the artwork on the wall and aggressively drops the temperature. During a recent investigation, a Chicago ghost hunting outfit allegedly recorded a temperature of -1 degrees Fahrenheit during their stay. Additionally, there was a couple staying at the hotel that reported a horrifying ghost encounter in room 17, where the wife woke up in the night and suddenly saw a lanky man dressed in 1920s clothing standing at the foot of the bed. Other active areas include the bar in room 22, home to a spirit named Raymond, rumored to be Lucy's manager. One employee of the Palmer House Hotel has confessed that their favorite paranormal experience is when guests complain about how noisy the people above them are, even though they are on the top floor. The ghost encounter encounters and paranormal activity is so frequent at the Palmer Hotel that the current owner, Kelly Freezer, didn't believe in ghosts, but this changed when she became the owner of the hotel. In at number 4 we have the soap factory. The soap factory was at its peak during the soap boom of the 1880s, though now the factory has been left abandoned. The soap factory is one of the oldest factories in Minneapolis. While the process of making soap required lots of fats, lie in extremely hot temperatures, therefore it wasn't the most glorious or safest workplace in its day. Furthermore, the fats came from animal carcasses, thousands of them. The flow of blood and skin leaked into the Great River next door in the turn of the century. The building's smell of flesh made it a hot spot for stray dogs that the city paid to be rounded up and sent to the end of their life. If that's not creepy enough, there are legends regarding malpractice taking place at the factory, with animal fats from local restaurants taken to be made into soap. And there were also rumors of child labor at the factory. But whatever you choose to believe, there is no denying that the site contains negative energy. Now the basement of the abandoned factory is used for haunted tours. The tour is so scary in fact that guests have to sign a waiver and have to be 18 to go on the tour. In at number 3 we have First Avenue. Located in downtown Minneapolis, the building, which is now home to this nightclub, has a rounded front, is painted black, and has white stars on its sidewalls with the names of many of the musical talents who have done shows in one of these 3 event rooms found inside. Before it was famous for being a nightclub, the First Avenue was a Greyhound depot. The First Avenue legend has to do with the building's former self, the great Art Deco Greyhound bus center that opened on 7th Street in 1937. The story goes that a young woman went to the station to meet her boyfriend who was returning home from World War II. When she was informed that he had died in combat, she ran into the restroom and ended her life due to heartbreak. In recent years, multiple First Avenue staffers have reported seeing a ghost in the washroom. The ghost has been reportedly described as a woman or was in a green army jacket and sometimes seen dancing at the club along with other ghosts. Legend says that many homeless people died in the bus station as well, and they can be seen dancing with the women. There have been reports of another spirit haunting the nightclub. The staffers nicknamed this spirit Slippy, while this particular ghost is said to make a balloon appear from nowhere which then floats up and down the staircase on its own. Dave Schrader, a paranormal investigator, visited First Avenue to assess the paranormal activity in the building multiple times and has concluded that the building is indeed haunted by many spirits, indicating that the record room is the most active area of the site. While DJs that have played at the venue have reported frequently hearing strange noises through their headphones, such as growls, voices and screams, other performers report their equipment being pushed off stage with no explanation. In at number 2 we have Schmid Brewery. Schmid Brewery became the largest in Minnesota by 1860, producing 1,200 barrels annually and shipping them as far south as Tennessee. It was restructured as the St. Paul Brewing Company in 1898 before being sold to Jacob Schmidt soon after in 1900. Since its opening in 1884, many ghost hunters have visited the Schmid Brewery to experience some of the many rumored paranormal activities. The brewery has been the site of many constant unexplainable instances, from fires to people losing their lives to terrible accidents. This place has seen a lot of scary sights. While the victims of these events linger around to haunt the grounds of the brewery, even though the building is now used as an artist's loft, that doesn't take away the scary history of the Schmid Brewery. While most of the ghosts that haunt the grounds of the old brewery have to do with ordinary brewery workers dying in terrible accidents, in 1896 2 workers lost their lives in an explosion. Furthermore, in 1902 a worker fell down an unmarked elevator shaft. Additionally, in 1904 Matthew Colo, a worker whose job was to light gas lamps in the brewery, lost his life from inhaling flames. Schmid Brewery has been a St. Paul haunt since 1855 for more than a couple of reasons, when owner Jacob Schmidt took down the original North Star Brewery sign, replacing it with his namesake, Jacob Schmidt Brewing Company. The entire brewery burned down a year later in 1900. Plenty of other bad luck would also follow on the grounds of the brewery, suspected due to the tragic death of many workers of the brewery. And finally, in at number 1 we have Four Pals Restaurant. Known as the most haunted restaurant in Minnesota, the Four Pal has a tragic story. Located in St. Paul, Four Pals was a high-end restaurant located in Irvine Park, and the restaurant is a beautiful Victorian mansion. Sadly though, the restaurant is now permanently closed. The dark stories about Four Pals Restaurant hint that the historic mansion is seriously haunted. As the story goes, back in the late 1800s, Joseph Fourpal had an affair with the mansion's maid, Molly. It was not long before his wife discovered this relationship and love for Mary. Therefore, the wife became extremely jealous of the servant and assigned Molly to do chores that would keep her away from the bedrooms and away from Joseph. Molly became pregnant and Joseph ended the affair, but Molly was so distraught about the whole situation that she ended her life. According to reports, she ended her life in the attic. Joseph was upset when he heard the news about Molly that he figured he could not stay in the house where his beloved died. One day he went out for a walk and and ended his life as well. Since then, restaurant guests and employees have reported creepy sightings of a woman dressed in 1800s attire, lights turning off and on by themselves, and strange noises coming from the attic. In one case, the disturbances were so chaotic that led to an investigation by the St. Paul police, whose canine dog refused to enter the attic. It is said that Joseph and Molly both haunt Vorpals, but many guests have said Molly is more active spirit. People say they have seen the two walking around the dining area, but Molly bangs on walls and smashes glasses. Some people say they can smell her lavender perfume. That being said, Mr. Vorpal is also sometimes seen, and his ghost has been reported wearing a dark waistcoat, silk vest, pinstripe trousers, and a derby hat. He can be seen going to the basement, at which time the lights flicker and shuffling noises are heard. He roams the house and has been caught on film many times. The former staff of the restaurant have also reported on many occasions when they would go floor by floor turning off lights as they close down for the night. Then when the staff members get in their cars to leave, they'll notice the top floor light is on. Nevertheless, if the restaurant is haunted, the story of Mr. Vorpal and Molly is one of the most devastating to date. Coming in at number 5, we have William A. Irvin. During the fall season, the ship has haunted tours with actors, but the ship really is haunted. The haunted ship began in Duluth in 1992. Before the haunted ship started, the William A. Irvin was open for regular boat tours during the month of October. Historically, this month was really slow, and the DECC needed a way to generate more revenue during this quiet month. Having heard about a failed attempt by Cleveland's William G. Mather trying to become a haunted ship, the DECC decided to try their own hands at a haunted attraction. The William A. Irvin partnered up with UMD to give the school's drama department some experience on production and acting. Needless to say, their attempt was a huge success. More than 2 decades later, the haunted ship is the peak of the Irvin's yearly business. The most common sighting that employees relate is that a lady in white has been seen walking around the ship, noticeably. She is usually up on deck and is dressed in period clothing. Nobody has ever been able to identify who she is or why she is tied to the vessel. There is also said to be a former captain who is still overseeing his ship. He is most often seen in the captain's chair and is said to be angry that the ship remains in dock and is no longer seaworthy. There are another 2 men haunting the ship. One sticks to the front of the ship and apparently does not understand what has happened to him, while the other sticks to the rear of the ship and has confirmed that he died after falling from a ladder. The family of the second man has come forward and said the story surrounding his death was always suspicious and they were denied a claim to his pension. In at number 4, we have Enger Tower. The 82-year-old watchtower can be found right in the middle of Enger Park. The tower was built in 1939 and looks over the Duluth Harbor, being known as one of the most well-known haunted places in Minnesota, and for good reason. The tower is 531 feet above Lake Superior and is built of bluestone from local sources. Enger Tower was first dedicated by Crown Prince Olav and Crown Princess Martha of Norway on June 15th. It was built as a tribute to businessman Bert Enger, who passed away in 1931. The dedication was in honor of Bert Enger, native of Norway who came to this country and became a successful furniture dealer. At the time of his death, Mr. Enger donated 2/3 of his estate to the city of Duluth. This included the land known as Enger Hill, which along with Enger Tower is also the home of Enger Park and Enger Golf Course. The tower can be seen almost anywhere throughout the city and has since been restored. There is a local legend that a man took his own life in 1948 by jumping off the 5th level of Enger Tower. They say his body has been found hours later but was never identified. That being said, there are numerous ghost stories of visitors seeing a man on the 5th floor of the tower before entering, but when they reach the top, he is gone. Coming in at number 3, we have Van Dusen Mansion. In 1892, grain baron George Van Dusen built a monumental mansion for his family. With 12,000 square feet, 10 fireplaces, a turret, and a $45,000 price tag, the home was a symbol of turn-of-the-century prosperity. After 2 generations of Van Dusens moved out in 1937, the building had been used to house almost everything except a family since, being used as a school, training medical facility, and even a college throughout the years. It was vacant in the late 1930s and spent 20 years as the College of Commerce. It was home to Hamline University Law School, then the Horst International Education Center. In the late 1980s, the castle fell on hard times and became little more than a flop house. By the early 90s, it was headed for the wrecking ball. 2 weeks before it was scheduled to be demolished, it was rescued by Wisconsin entrepreneur Bob Poling, who bought it for $237,000. Now a venue to hold fairy tale-esque weddings, the Van Dusen Mansion has had its fair share of past lives. In at number 2 we have Mounds Theater. The renovated theater, an 86-year-old movie house, can be found in Minnesota. The old theaters have been rumored for the past several years to be a home of community of creepy ghosts. One story goes as the Mounds was built in 1922 and operated as a movie house until 1967, when it closed so abruptly that when volunteers arrived many years later to renovate the place, they found popcorn on the floor. The subject of paranormal TV shows and professional ghost hunting investigations, the theater is allegedly haunted by a trio of ghosts: a happy little girl who bounces a ball on stage, a cursed old man who lurks in the shadowy corners of the projection booth, and a crestfallen usher who walks up and down the aisles in search of his lost love. The ghosts in the theaters are so active that the owner had a party of 4 Ghostbusters in a projection room sit in one dark and stormy October night. The dim light was extinguished and the room grew chilled. The owner stated that as the 4 sat silently awaiting their fate, shivering in the dark, and all at once there was the sound of a man crying. When investigating the sounds of the crying man, they found a shadow figure in the corner of the room. The figure reported having black glittering eyes and an aura of anger. Because of the odd ghost encounter and negative energy, they had to abruptly end the ghost investigation before it was too late. Another former owner who reopened the theatre in 2001 claims that the spirits of the theatre have gotten physical and grabbed them while they were working late at night. Some paranormal investigators have left with claw marks on their backs, but the scariest ghost of them all is considered the young girl. This is the theatre's most notorious ghost and is seen in a pink dress, often bouncing a ball on the stage. And finally, in at number 1 we have Anoka State Hospital. Located in Anoka town is the Anoka State Hospital, which is arguably the most haunted place in Minnesota. The Anoka Hospital was the first state asylum for individuals that were deemed insane. The building was established in 1898 and opened in 1900 to admit patients from other state asylums that had become too crowded. The first 100 patients were males from St. Peter's State Hospital and were considered to be chronic incurables, men who had lost their minds due to heredity, causes, or environment. In 1906, 115 women were also transferred to the asylum from St. Peter's State Hospital. Residents were not to receive any type of treatment at this asylum, as this was the final stop for them until they passed away. And passed they did. A total of 86 of the original patients were buried in numbered graves in the asylum cemetery. The original name of the institution was Anoka State Asylum, but in an attempt to soften the image, they changed its name in 1937 to the Anoka State Hospital. Although the name was kinder and gentler, treatment at the facility was not. Patients were subjected to medical experiments and suffered both mental and physical harm. The original hospital complex closed in 1999 and residents were transferred to a new facility located close by. The buildings and property were then given to Anoka County to use for offices and to house the county workhouse. The remainder of the buildings were closed and boarded up. With such a terrifying past, it is no wonder that the Anoka State Hospital has been rumored to house the spirits of past patients. Former employees have reported that while unusual occurrences happen throughout the buildings, the most paranormal activities are linked to the tunnels located below the buildings. These tunnels were used as a way of transferring patients from one building to another without risking escape. Ironically, many patients believed these tunnels would lead them to freedom, and so they tried to escape by going down into them, but after a few twists and turns, escapees realized that the tunnels were more of a maze than an escape route. Without an understanding of where each tunnel went and how they joined together, it was easy to get hopelessly lost in them. Several escapees became so disorientated and distraught that they took the only way out that they felt was left to them and ended their lives. For years, employees would report hearing footsteps trudging through the tunnels, stopping, pausing. There was also reports of whispering and low voices in conversation, but the words were not understood. The paranormal activities became so rampant that most employees refused to use the tunnels because they were just too eerie. Today, only maintenance and security are allowed in them. Today, the county owns the buildings that made up the former insane asylum complex. Although the complex was eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, it appears that time has passed. The current buildings are in a state of extreme disrepair. Coming in at number 5 we have South Manatee Island in Leland. South Manatee Island is part of an island chain in Lake Michigan that extends north to the Straits of Mackinac. The only public access is by ferry from Leland, Michigan. The island consists of a ridge of tilted layers of limestone buried under a blanket of glacial debris. 16 miles offshore from the Leelanau Peninsula, featuring 300-foot sand dunes, deserted shoreline, and empty campground. It's about as terrestrially creepy as you can get in Michigan. In the 1800s, the island became a popular harbor for ships traversing the newly built Erie Canal into the Great Lakes and on to Chicago. One local legend surrounds a ship full of passengers stricken with cholera stopped at South Manatee, where sailors buried their victims in a mass grave, some of them still alive at the time. Soon after this incident, the first appearance of ghosts and hauntings began. The mass grave is believed to be near the old cemetery just north of the Bay campground. This is also near where the old dock used to be located. Additionally, the passage between mainland Michigan and Manatee is one of the deadliest sections of Lake Michigan. This is due to a sudden weather change, creating a navigational hazard, causing over 50 known shipwrecks. Traffic was quite busy here during the late 1800s, and there were frequent accidents where ships would literally run into each other. Off the coast of the island lies the shipwreck of the SS Francisco Morazan, where rumors say a young island boy died after trying to explore on his own. There are also two cemeteries on the island and an ancient cedar forest where voices are said to be heard. The haunting of this island is so bad it has driven park rangers to go mad and demand to be taken off the island. One ranger even confessed to hearing voices, footsteps, and slamming of doors inside buildings that were otherwise unoccupied. Coming in at number 4, we have Masonic Temple. With over 16 floors and 1,000 rooms, this Gothic temple is one of the most striking buildings in Detroit. Furthermore, this is the largest Masonic temple in the world. According to rumors, there are hidden passageways, rooms, and staircases, so be careful as you might get lost quite quickly within the walls of this temple. The most famous urban myth associated with the temple is that of the architect George D. Mason. Legend has it that Mason went bankrupt funding the construction of the temple. He was going through financial difficulties and was very close to foreclosure. Due to this stress, George D. jumped to his death from the roof. This story will back up the fact that many reports of a ghost climbing the steps to the roof of the building as if stuck in a loop of his darkest moment. Even scarier, additionally, guards frequently find the door to the roof unlocked, even when it was just checked moments earlier. Additionally, the temple has various cold spots and doors are reported to close suddenly. One of the roof doors is said to swing open just moments after it is locked by a watchman. Many people report the feeling of being watched while inside of the building. Coming in at number 3, we have Doherty Hotel. The Doherty family has owned and operated the hotel since it opened in the 1920s. The Doherty men were and remain the business managers. However, as the current owner Jim Doherty tells it, it was the Doherty women who were the heart and soul of the business. The hotel has a colorful history. During Prohibition, it was a speakeasy, a place for backroom gambling and adult entertainment. It was also a meeting place for the Mafia and Purple Gang. Here, they worked out their differences. In 1938, the hotel was the site of one of the Michigan's most notorious murders. Isaiah Lebo, former Purple Gang attorney turned Purple Gang businessman, was murdered in the bar. He was shot by his cousin and business partner Jack Livingston and sadly passed away. Ever since, there have been numerous hauntings. Some believe it's Lebo who haunts the ground or grandmother Helen Doherty who passed away at the hotel. But there is one thing for sure, and it's the many ghost stories that are now associated with the hotel. Guests, visitors, investigators, employees, and the owners have all had some kind of paranormal experience at the hotel, which includes perfume scent wafting through occasionally, loud knocking, bedroom doors open and close by themselves, and dark apparitions and shadowy figures have been spotted anywhere from the lobby to the top floor. Also, the spirits of other murder victims roam the halls, lobbies, and rooms. While some can be seen, others prefer to just make noise. Coming in at number 2, we have Michigan's first state prison. Established in 1838, Michigan's first state prison remained in operation through 1934. The prison served as the nucleus for the city as it spanned some 20 acres. Over the years, it relocated and at one point became the largest walled prison in the world with around 6,000 inmates. In 1952, in response to poor medical care, brutality from the guards, and bad food, 2 maximum security prisoners took hold of a guard and used his keys to release other inmates. A days-long riot ensued, resulting in 9 guards being held hostage. Additionally, the riot resulted in the deaths of several inmates and guards before it was extinguished by the National Guard. The inmates fought for and won a list of 11 demands for reform. Today, the old prison has become the Armory Arts Village, a residence residence and studio for local artisans. Apartments are very contemporary and halls are covered with artwork. In spite of its modern renovations and freshly painted walls, though rumors persist of its haunting, visitors, workers and artists of the space claim some prisoners and guards still haunt their former home. Residual sounds of riots are also frequently reported due to the prison's history of such occurrences. Judy Krasnow, an employee at the renovated Arts Village, hosts daytime historic tours of the prison, so a visitor can see the hauntings for themselves. She is also a resident of the prison and lives on site. She has confessed she believes her apartment, which was once a series of prison cells, has ghosts. Furthermore, Judy is not the only resident who believes that. Even though the upper floors have undergone renovations, the underground section that holds solitary confinement remains structurally intact. Although cells have been removed, there is intensity in this area that cannot be denied. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Whitney Restaurant. Located on Woodward Avenue, Restaurant Whitney was the former mansion home of David Whitney. David was one of the Midwest's wealthiest lumber barons at the turn of the century, and he built this magnificent 21,000 square foot home in 1894. The mansion was restored in the mid-1980s, and since then reports of unexplained paranormal activities have been reported, such as shadow figures have been seen on the second floor, disembodied voices have been heard, and other strange phenomena have occurred. It is known that the mansion is haunted by Whitney and his first wife Flora. Flora always wanted to live in a mansion but died before the home was finished, leaving Whitney to raise their 4 children. A year after Flora's death, Whitney married her sister Sarah, leaving Flora's ghost to forever live in distress. The paranormal activity within the restaurant is not for the faint-hearted, as there have been reports of the elevator travelling between floors on its own with no one inside to operate it. Furthermore, ghosts have been witnessed on the upper floors, with one staff member seeing an older man looking out the window. The staff member approached the man asking him to leave, and right before the staff's eyes the man vanishes into the floor. Other reports include noises that sound like silverware and kitchenware being handled and or stacked in table settings keep getting moved around by some unseen presence. The outhouse is said to be the most haunted part of the property. It was originally built for Whitney's slaves and has been largely untouched for years, mostly due to the fear of paranormal. Inside the outhouse is a dining table that is set for the afternoon tea and has been untouched for as long as anyone can remember. Today it is still perfectly set but covered in a thick layer of dust, adding to the ghostly atmosphere. The outhouse has no electricity, so sits in the darkness at night. A tour guide who once worked at the Whitney insisted that the building was haunted for his experiences working there. The worker claims a group of dolls vanished from a room inside the building. Also, the worker has reported hearing his name being called from an empty area of the building. The Whitney Mansion is an elegant and beautiful property but has high body counts, a haunting history, and plenty of supernatural sightings still happening today.
Kicking off the list at number 5, the Landmark Inn. Located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course, let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so, as a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the Lilac Room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, oh, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these two women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always 2, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Duen Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with them, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House, where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus, in 1924, they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down. That one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move. They can go through walls. They can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house. You guessed it. It's upstairs. That's so scary. Due to this and the strange eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds. Most likely. They're definitely there. It sounds like they're there. They're for sure there. Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either, living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost barks? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. We're like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't want to look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Lodge. The old Allegan Elk Lodge was built in 1909. It was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. While the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909, somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. That's just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, well, they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge. Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy. They have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge. Especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located, the basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. They'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing at the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, 0.0 Barks Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, a lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on 0.0 Barks. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been 0.0 Barks' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, I would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many a times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where did they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear this. Wear my morning clothes, who knows?
And coming in at number 5, we have the Hoton Mansion. Built in the 1890s in North Adams, Massachusetts, for the mayor himself, Albert Charles Hoton. This neoclassical revival-style mansion sits on 172 Church Street. A family man, Albert was the president of Arnold Print Works, a prominent textile factory in North Adams. His wife, Cordelia, daughter Mary, and himself had owned and lived on the property right up until the fatal car accident which took the lives of the family in 1914. On an early summer morning, Albert and his family, accompanied by another family, Dr. and Mrs. Dutton and their daughter, and of course the family chauffeur himself, Mr. Witters, had decided to head out into the countryside for a leisurely drive, a drive that ultimately took their lives. Unfortunately, for everyone on that August 1st morning, after a steep turn, the car lost control and proceeded to screech off the road, resulting in a rolling fatal wreck. All the women in this tragedy losing their lives, with the men barely surviving from the multitude of injuries. On August 11th, just 10 days after the accident, without his wife and daughter, Albert mysteriously died in the home from what doctors think was a broken heart. It is said that 3 ghosts haunt the Hoton Mansion, including Albert himself, Albert's daughter Mary, and the driver, Mr. Witters. The mansion remained with the Hoton family until 1926, when Albert's daughter Florence and her husband sold the building to the Freemasons. This is when the spookiness really started happening. Through its multitude of use throughout the years, additions to this historic site were added on by the Masons, using it for ritual and spiritual purposes, making this story even weirder. Over the years, there have been countless paranormal witnesses claiming that the ghosts roaming the halls of the basement, Mr. Witters himself, guilt-ridden with the responsibility of the crash, and Mr. Witters took his own life shortly after returning home with injuries, and residents that have stayed at the site have claimed that the manly figure aimlessly rummaging through the basement is the driver himself. Among these claims have another spirit lurking in Mary's bedroom. It is said that overnighters have witnessed multiple bright lights and auras flying around the bedroom in the middle of the night. I wouldn't even step foot into this house, let alone set up camp and spend the night. No way. The Hoton Mansion remains a tourist attraction and hotspot for paranormal goers worldwide, and to this day is one of the most haunted and mysterious sites in all of Massachusetts. Number 4. The Husk Tunnel. The Husk Tunnel, from the Algonquin word place of stones and the Mohawk word forbidden, is a 4.75-mile active railroad tunnel in western Massachusetts that passes through the Husk Range, an extension of Vermont's Green Mountains, and runs from Deerfield River in the town of Florida to the city of North Adams. The construction began in 1815 and ending in 1875 with a budget of $2 million, at the time the largest tunnel ever constructed, and it was later the result of taking lives of over 200 men during its construction entirety, earning it the nickname from locals, the Bloody Pit. This haunted, barren, 5-mile, completely enclosed stretch was subject to multiple accidents and deaths over the years, giving the tunnel its haunting history and reputation of being cursed itself. With the word forbidden, did the Mohawks know something that the workers didn't? Essentially, this cold, underground, pitch-black hole became one of America's strangest grave sites, resulting in everything from mysterious gas leaks, dynamite explosions, roofs collapsing, and even mechanic failures resulting in a mass flood. For the past decades, there have been numerous paranormal activity witnesses who have documented strange events, from police officers to the freight conductors themselves. Some of the reports over the last 100 years included numerous farmers and wagons ending up in different areas of the railroad, missing hours of time. The farmers had claimed that when spending time around the railroad and its tracks, that memory and confusion would always set in. Some residents have claimed that they have even been chased out of the tunnel by an unexpected freight train chugging along aggressively through the tunnel like a bat out of hell, and then vanishing. Numerous ghostly figures resembling workers roam the dark tunnel, and if that isn't scary enough, some people, including hearing the echoes and screams of even the workers who were buried alive under the rock, still holding their tools, or even seeing ghostly figures in pumping chambers where numerous men tirelessly making rafts not to drown. The Husk Tunnel remains one of the most visited and haunted places, marking it just one of the sites you'll probably never find me at. Just in 2020, the tunnel was yet again subject to a mysterious collapse, resulting in months of repair. Yeah, I say stop fixing it and just let it be. Number 3. The USS Salem. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Well, almost. A big boat. The USS Salem, a heavy cruiser built for World War II in 1945, was originally built for action. Its bold, aggressive architecture was one of the last, as it was more of a bluff to its opponents than actually a hero of war. In May 1949, War Departments handed the Salem's helm to Captain J.C. Daniel himself. The ship was built and updated with what was then the latest military tech and weapons, and it was meant to strike fear in whomever or whatever was in her way. Although the ship ship wasn't used in any action during World War II. It acted as a flagship, training operation, and main purpose as a threat to the naval enemy. It wasn't until the USS Salem had responded to the 1953 Ionian earthquake, or also known as the Great Kefalonia earthquake, as it hit the southern Ionian islands of Greece on August 12th, devastating the entire area. The USS Salem landed on Greek shores and acted as an improvised hospital and morgue, giving it its famous name, the Sea Witch. The ship was decommissioned shortly after its rescue and lays in Boston's harbor as a tourist attraction from all of its dark history. Some of the paranormal activities that arise on the ship include the Burning Man, who smells of rank death and can be seen in the mess hall where the bodies have been stored. Another famous apparition on the ship is the ghost girls who lurk the halls of the ship. Little ghostly figures can be seen and felt on the legs of tour goers. Some people claim that the ship is even home to hellhounds, an aggressive pack of ghostly creatures that roam the ship growling and scratching at closed doors. Yeah, the next time my dog scratches at my door, she's going up for adoption. I'm sorry. Number 2, the Lizzie Borden House. This quaint bed and breakfast located at 230 2nd Street is home to one of America's most haunted and mysterious homes. The Lizzie Borden House gets its haunt from an unsolved murder of Lizzie Borden in 1892. One of the most infamous true crime figures known for her murdering of her father and stepmother with several blows to the head with a hatchet. Oof, ouch. Although acquitted, the killings remain unsolved to this day. This case earned notoriety and much that the popular local children's rhyme had been linked to this death. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That is horrible. On August 4th, 1892, Lizzie's stepmother of 27 was struck 19 times while her father Andrew was hit 11. Although Lizzie Borden was acquitted and found not guilty, the dark history draws in crowds every night for its nightly tour of the premises. The Lizzie Borden room, the infamous room where all of the murders took place, is the most requested and most popular for paranormal overnighters. And not only can you enjoy a lovely inclusive breakfast to yourself, but the nightly house tour, ghost tour, and ghost hunt attracts fans of horror every night of the year. Yeah, that's terrifying. And there's a jingle to it. I don't like that at all. And coming in at number 1, the Salem Witch Trials. We can't talk about haunted places in Massachusetts if we're not going to bring up the witch trials. And I'm not talking about Sabrina the Teenage Witches, or anything of cute of that nature. These famously documented witch trials need no introduction, and unfortunately lays way to one of the most horrific events based in truth. The site of mass hysteria and hangings of supposed witches took place here and occurred in colonial Massachusetts between 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, or better known back then as the devil's magic, and 20 were ultimately executed. Eventually, the colony admitted the trials were a mistake and compensated the families of those convicted. Okay, yeah, sorry. I just thought when you sneezed, you didn't say bless you, so I already don't like you, so I figured you were a witch. I'm really sorry. Since then, the story of the trials has become famous in paranoia and injustice, and it continues to baffle researchers to this day. We all know the famous play written by American playwright Arthur Miller in 1953, The Crucible, depicting the mass hysteria and drama during these trials. This was the perfect time if you didn't like someone that a strategic and untimely sinister accusation led to the demise of thy neighbor. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. Who else don't I like? I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil. Abigail. End of Act 1. Since the start of the trials and hysteria in North America, other European countries shortly followed with their own mass witch hunts, resulting in somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 tried and executed for witchcraft. That's a lot of broomsticks. The Salem Witch Trials of Salem, Massachusetts is still one of the world's biggest hotspots for mystery and paranormal story. Number 5, Hockomock Swamp. Already sounds pretty scary in itself. Something about swamps, you know what I mean? During the 17th century, the Hockomock Swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag people, the predominant band of natives in the area, against invasion by the early British settlers. It played a landscape role in King Philip's War as a strategic base of which to launch assaults with nearby English settlements. During the 18th and 19th centuries, settlers deemed the swamp to be useless, barren land, and it didn't really do much besides sit there and just kind of take up space. They attempted to drain it and convert it into a profitable farmland, however, nothing really grew. The natives of the region placed a much higher value on the swamp, however, for centuries. The first people had relied on hunting food there, riddled with fauna, and the swamp had gained an important legend and folklore among them as being a place where many things meet. They named it Hockomock, the Algonquin term meaning place where spirits dwell, and that's exactly what people say they do. Dwell there. What makes this swamp so haunted is the different purposes it was used for. A cesspool for bones of the fallen. Some places are just more susceptible to violence and death over the years, and that reputation of spirits lingering is what's so heavy and cold about this location. Much of the swamp served a dual purpose as a sacred burial ground as well. The Hockomock is occasionally referred to as the home of the Hobomok. The Wampanoag people worshipped and feared Hobomok, the chief deity of death and disease. Hobomok, composed of human souls of the dead, was known to congregate in areas like the Hockomock Swamp. Thus the term and lore stuck. Yep, just a giant mud monster swallowing souls. Charming. There are many stories and legends that have become associated with this swamp and are even connected to the number 1 on my list. It remains a place of mystery and fear and apparently good frog catching. Number 4. Lowell Cemetery. Lowell Cemetery is a cemetery located in Lowell, Massachusetts. Founded in 1841 and located on the banks of the Concord River, the cemetery is one of the oldest garden cemeteries in the country, making it a perfect place for violence and an eternity of soul searching. Many of Lowell's wealthy industrialists are buried here under lavish Victorian tombstones. Visitors have claimed that this is one of Massachusetts' most haunted cemeteries. What makes a haunted cemetery more haunted than another haunted cemetery, you know? Is there like a competition or like a quota or something? Just gotta keep the numbers up. What is it? I feel like every local claims their cemetery is the oldest and most haunted, and this brings me to our fair maiden here, the mysterious witch, Bonnie. A popular meeting place amongst the local teens at night for some scares and some screams, the statue of a woman with her arms outstretched on a rectangular tomb, her hands clutching a veil that falls down behind her body as though it were a cloak caught in the wind. Her eyes lay cold, staring at the heavens. Under her left eye, a black tear. Paranormal researchers have claimed that the statue holds more of an electromagnetic current, and strange things can be seen in front and around the statue, making it seem like it's moving from time to time. Creepy. There is local lore that if you leave a coin or ribbon on the statue, then you'll get good luck, and in return, if you steal or take the items from the statue, the haunting whispers of bad karma will follow. Although research shows that this gravesite holds no actual sinister history, the ghostly sightings surrounding it are a hotspot within the cemetery. I bet at night under the moonlight this woman could be very terrifying. Number 3. Boston Common. Most common fact about the Common, one of the most haunted places in Boston. That rhymed really weird, didn't it? If you're out for a walk and feel the need to brush up on your American history, then you can be sure to either see the ladies by the trees or the Patriot men rushing the battlefront. Well, what's left behind from them at least. The Boston Common had a multi-purpose identity through the centuries. Originally as a farm, and then trading grounds for the British and American military, the Common was used as a camp during the American Revolutionary War. 20 minutes to load these old muskets and a lot of people dying. It was also used for public hangings up until 1817, most of which were from the large oaks, which were eventually all replaced with gallows in 1769. These grounds held weight during the witch trials and made a perfect open concept park that a spectacle could be enjoyed at. These people were sick. This place has seen its fair share of violence. The 350-year-old park is full of graves, ghosts, and gallows. It's almost impossible to know just how many bodies lay underneath the park, like a cesspool of unmarked graves from many different eras. Most buried here were low class, sick, or died in battle. Oh, and of course were hanged in front of the public. This place is home to many dark shadows, cold spots, and the occasional smell of gunpowder. Next time you're in Boston, swing by one of America's oldest and fullest cemeteries and see if you can see anything for yourself. Number 2. The Danvers State Hospital. The Danvers State Hospital, or also known as the Danvers State Insane Asylum, was a psychiatric hospital located in Danvers, Massachusetts. It was built in 1874 and opened in 1878 on the isolated site in rural Massachusetts, which, fun fact, the judge who preceded the Salem witch trials lived on. That's bad karma already, isn't it? Despite being included in the National Registry for Historical Places in 1984, the majority of the building was demolished in 2007. At a cost of $1.5 million at the time, the hospital originally consisted of 2 main center buildings with housing for the administration, with 4 radiating wings on each side. The outermost wards were reserved for the most hostile patients. This was a prominent location where medications were being tested by the government, and the favored lobotomy was being fleshed out. When shock therapy failed to control the population, lobotomies started, and in 1939 the population of the hospital swelled to almost over 2,400 patients. A total of 278 people died at the hospital that same year. Neurology experts often call Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. Ouch. Visitors to the hospital during these years reported lobotomy patients wandering around staring blankly at nothing, unaware of who they were or what they were doing. Large budget cuts in the 60s played a major role in the progression of closing the Danvers State Hospital, and with nicknames like Hell Hill Hospital and Lunatic Asylum, the hospital began slowly closing its facilities by 1985. The original hospital wards were closed and abandoned soon after. During the 80s, reports began to filter out of the hospital about missing teenage patients. The stories of ghostly figures and shadows in the windows were thriving. Are the ghosts of the lobotomized patients still aimlessly walking the realms of this now demolished hospital? What do you think? And number 1, the Bridgewater Triangle. Just a couple miles south of Boston is one of the most interesting and bizarre places in Massachusetts. I chose this as the number 1 spot due to not only the paranormal ghostly figures that have been seen across the vast plains, but 200 miles of connected weird events that will definitely catch our attention. It's named from the triangle shape. The paranormal events and phenomenon that occurs within these mapped lines includes as many as orbs, UFOs, Bigfoots, fairies, skinwalkers, alien hybrids, you name it, it's there. Well, possibly there. The towns of Raynham, Brockton, Norton, and Taunton are all subject to a universal head scratcher. In the 70s, there of course was a surge of UFO witnesses, at the same time several Bigfoot. Huh, that's interesting. Massachusetts just keeps getting stranger and stranger, doesn't it? Huge humanoid creatures, motherships, and landed UFOs have also been spotted and reported within this 200 square foot mile radius. Do you think this place is like a Skinwalker Ranch type of place? Maybe some motherships are trying to just reconnect with the Wi-Fi upstairs? I don't know. Whatever it is, the Bridgewater Triangle has been home to numerous documentaries and folklore and attracts spooky goers each year with its variety of paranormal activity.
Number 5 on this list is the Seelbach Hotel. Seelbach Hotel is located in the heart of Louisville and has been there for quite some time. Virginia Travel Tips says, in 1905 the Seelbach Hotel in Louisville opened its doors. For more than a century, this exquisite historic hotel has functioned as one of Kentucky's most important historical landmarks. The hotel, on the other hand, is notorious for its ghostly activity. Patricia Wilson, the Lady in Blue, is one of the hotel's most famous sightings. She was a woman who had recently divorced her spouse and intended to meet him later at Seelbach to try and work out their differences. Unfortunately, her husband died in a car accident and never showed up. She was devastated by the loss and she died not long after that. As a result, guests notice a woman in a blue outfit strolling around the hotel. Other ghosts have been reported at the hotel, and they include a woman dressed in old, worn-out clothing who was approached by a staff member attempting to communicate with her, but then she disappeared. Most of the encounters with this woman have been tame, but there have been some that have gotten quite aggressive. Some teenagers were apparently making fun of her or doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, and she responded by literally clawing and scratching at one of them, leaving horrible marks behind. The victim also said that it felt as if she crawled into his brain and told him horrible secrets about himself that he'll never be able to forget. A hotel like this is supposed to be nice and relaxing, but based on what I've read, I don't know if that's going to be the experience you get at Seelbach. Number 4 on this list is the Talbot Tavern. Really too bad that this place is haunted, because it would have been a pretty nice spot to get a brew if it wasn't. Virginia Travel Tips says, built in 1778, the Talbot Tavern is located in Bardstown, Kentucky. Currently, the Haunted Kentucky Tavern serves as both a restaurant and a 5-room B&B, and it's known for being haunted. A former accountant recalls coming across a man in a long coat strolling across the top floor. He then turned to face her and began laughing uncontrollably. Another famous hotel resident was the Lady in White, who forced a couple to flee the hotel in the middle of the night since she was hovering over them while sleeping. Many workers and visitors to the residence have related accounts such as orbs floating around the rooms, flashes of lights without cameras being seen, objects moving on their own, and doors opening and closing when no one's in the building. I, for one, am not trying to wake up to a ghost just hovering over me, guys. Honestly, it might give me a heart attack and, well, I'd never wake up again. This place is weird because no one really knows why it's as haunted as it is, but there's no doubt that it's teeming with paranormal energy. Pick a different place to go get a drink if you're in Kentucky. Number 3 on this list is the Kentucky State Penitentiary. We always got to include the creepy jail in one of these lists, guys, and this is Kentucky's. Virginia Travel Tips says the Kentucky State Penitentiary is situated near the Tennessee border on a sharp bend in the Cumberland River. In the 1800s, a maximum security jail was built there. It is a gorgeous place from afar, but up close, it is a death and ghost machine, according to a local author and paranormal investigator. Thousands of men have been executed in the prison's electric chair, known as Old Sparky. During his death row cell inspections in the late 1980s, a guard had a terrible incident where no one stayed. He was greeted by a prisoner who was reading the Bible. When he returned to his office, he asked about the prisoner's meal, only to discover that no one was in that cell. When he returned to the cell, he discovered that it was empty except for a small Bible on the floor. Yeah, kinda weird. More strange occurrences were recorded around the institution, with many reporting seeing a reflection of an inmate who attempted to shock them. Okay, so honestly guys, I want to take this as seriously as possible, but Old Sparky? Like, imagine dying in a thing called Old Sparky. Like, I think it's meant to electrocute people, but why does the killing chair sound so cute? Kinda sounds like something that you name your dog, not a murder weapon. Anyways, Old Sparky has certainly done its job though, and now the place is super haunted. Most of the prisons we talk about on this channel you can go visit if you like, because they're all typically abandoned. That's not the case with this one though. The Kentucky State Penitentiary is still fully operational and has tons of prisoners in it. Not only do these people have to chill in jail, but it just so happens that their jail is also haunted. Number 2 on this list is Mammoth Cave. So we actually spoke about Mammoth Cave on this channel before in our series about top 5 terrifying caves where evil awaits, so if that interests you, then go check it out. It made that list because it was super haunted, and naturally it has to make this one as well. It is, as you'd expect, located in Kentucky. It is the biggest cave in the state by far, which is why it's named Mammoth Cave. Most of the cave has been unexplored, which is kind of nuts considering we've already seen about 400 miles of it up until this point. This has been an area of interest to people for thousands of years. Back 4,000 years ago, it's believed that people used this cave to bury their dead. This was the first encounter this cavern saw of death, but it definitely wasn't the last. After the War of 1812, these caves were sold off and used as a place to mine salt. The workers of these mines were slaves and oftentimes were worked to death down there. After the salt had been mined, this place functioned as a spot for sick tuberculosis victims to go. Obviously, this created more death in this place and just contributed to what is a very haunted area now. Today, we get an array of ghostly apparitions popping up to people. Ghosts from all the way back 4,000 years ago have been seen, still lingering and clinging onto this cavern. People have seen the visions of slaves calling out for help and ghosts of sickly individuals as well. H.P. Lovecraft, one of the most famous fantasy horror writers, was inspired by this cave. Anything that inspired that guy is probably a spot that you want to avoid. And finally, number 1 on this list is Nada Tunnel. What is it about tunnels that's just so creepy? It feels like there are a few locations in the world that seem to attract paranormal activity, and tunnels are definitely right up there. Virginia Travel Tips says Nada Tunnel, also known as the Gateway to Red River Gorge, is located in Powell County, Kentucky. Works of a 1-lane tunnel on a 2-way road began in 1910 and concluded in 1911. Drills and dynamite were used to rip through the limestone rock during construction, and one worker died while attempting to dissolve a stick of frozen dynamite by placing it next to the fire, which, resulted in the dynamite exploding. As a result, the man's spirit is claimed to haunt the Kentucky Tunnel. Others allege that the location is haunted as a result of a climber who died in this region. These incidents are linked to the mythology of a green orb appearing in front of the tunnel. If you plan to enter the tunnel, keep in mind that it only fits one automobile at a time, therefore check for other car headlights before proceeding. This is one of the coolest haunted places in Kentucky for the sake of it being engulfed in nature. climber. So it may look really cool, but the haunted nature of this spot makes me think that it should be avoided. Man, imagine literally getting blown up by a stick of dynamite. Like, that might actually be the worst. Granted, my dude did stick the dynamite literally right next to a fire, so I feel like he might have brought this one on himself a little bit. I'm not really sure how the climber would have died in this tunnel, but you gotta imagine that he screwed up if he was climbing in a tunnel. Either way, the spot is definitely riddled with these spirits, and they manifest themselves as this glowing green orb. Now, there haven't been too many reports of this thing being super dangerous, but it is definitely creepy to say the least. Locals don't really travel down this pathway for fear of the orb and what it could potentially do to them. Also, on a total side note, I just want to bring up the fact that this is a one-way tunnel on a two-lane road. Like, how dangerous is that, guys? What if it's foggy or something and I can't see all the way down the tunnel to the other car? That is literally the dumbest road design I have ever heard of. Maybe the legend was just created by the locals because they know how dangerous this freaking tunnel is. Regardless of what it is, I recommend staying away.
In at number 5, we have Eldridge Hotel. The Eldridge Hotel is a historic building located in downtown Lawrence, Kansas. The building is named after Sheila Eldridge, who was a prominent anti-slavery individual who lived here in the 1800s. The building became an apartment complex in the 1970s, but there was a strong desire by the city to see it open as a hotel, and a group of investors contributed, as well as the city of Lawrence, into industrial revenue bonds to make this dream a reality. In the later 1980s, it opened as a hotel. A popular story has circulated about the hauntings in this hotel, with the locals, employees, and guests that the ghost is that of Sheila Eldridge, who haunts the halls to this day. Many claim that because the Eldridge house's original cornerstone is located in room 506, and his spirit will manifest in that room and also roam around the building. People who have stayed in this room have claimed to witness breath marks on recently cleaned mirrors, doors opening and shutting on their own, and lights turning on and off by themselves. Others claim that the hotel's elevator is also haunted by a different spirit who is known to open and shut the elevator doors on the 5th floor. The 5th floor is said to contain a portal to the spirit world. A popular photograph was taken during the 1980s that clearly shows a ghost-like figure in the building's elevator. Many other photographers have mentioned having unexplained technical difficulties with their cameras when near the elevator. The story of the hotel and the hauntings of Eldridge was the inspiration for the movie The Demon's Shadow, and the hotel was featured in the series My Ghost Story and has been depicted in many writings. Many believe the rich history has resulted in the amount of paranormal activity. In at number 4, Midland Railroad Hotel. The Midland Railroad Hotel is known for serving the largest steak around, and if you can finish all of it, you get it for free. But it has a sinister, haunting history. It was first a popular train stop in the 1890s, then known for being the location for the movie Paper Moon, where many scenes were filmed at this hotel in 1973. Since then, it's gone through fires, the Great Depression, and plenty of renovations. It is now owned by the Wilson Foundation, has been back in business since 2003, and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Not only is this hotel known for these interesting things, it's most known now for the paranormal activity that lurks around the hotel. The most famous ghost is that of an orphan girl that haunts the 3rd floor, who knocks on doors, runs through the hallways, and even jumps on your bed, leaving little footprints. A ghost hunting team has experienced this spirit and have recorded sounds of the little girl. Another 3rd floor room is where a sheriff was said to have been lynched, and sometimes the door is unable to be unlocked even by the master key. Ghostly figures have been seen at the top of the stairs, and things in the kitchen have flown distances suddenly without being touched by anyone. There are also many ghostly figures that are seen on the staircases, and have left many to believe that the fire that took many lives back in 1902 are the results of some of these paranormal presences. The owner of the Midland Railroad Hotel, Melinda Merrill, says that there's not one employee who hasn't seen or felt something, and you can definitely feel a presence when you enter the hotel. In at number 3, we have Hotel Josephine. The Hotel Josephine is considered by many to be the most haunted hotel in Kansas. It was built in 1890, located in the city of Hoton, and is the oldest consecutive operating hotel west of the Mississippi River. The history of the hotel is rich but also very haunted. The hotel was built by A.D. Walker and was named after his daughter Josephine. When it was built, she was only 4 months old, and she attended the local elementary school and graduated Kansas University. Her graduation photo is hung in the front parlor, above the antique piano, and according to the current current hotel manager, Tracer Fox, her spirit is just one that is wandering the hotel. Tracer Fox has expressed his belief in the spirits when he first stayed at the hotel. He was woken up suddenly at 3:30 AM and his bed was moving. He figured there was an earthquake, but when nothing in the news confirmed it, he knew it was a spirit. His mother came and stayed in a room across from him and experienced the exact same thing he did with no explanation for it. They had been skeptics before these happenings, but they are both now firm believers. Other guests staying at the hotel have similar stories, as well as experiencing hearing strange sounds, laughter, footsteps, and seeing shadows. It has been expressed that spirits can be found on each floor. One of the most haunted rooms in the hotel is the Buffalo Room, where shadows are often seen and photographed in the mirrors around the room, as well as the Carrie Nation Room. According to historical documents, a woman hanged herself in the bathroom of that room, and many guests staying there have come out of the room clutching their necks and having a hard time breathing. The hotel has brought several famous guests over the years, including former US President Grover Cleveland, who stayed there in between his 2 terms as president, along with Carrie Nation, Robert Louis Stevenson, Charles Curtis, Kirstie Alley, John Sullivan, Sam Rayburn, and Harry Langdon. Due to the amount of paranormal activity and active spirits in this hotel, the hotel hosts several paranormal and haunted events throughout the year, and many ghost hunters come to Hoton to check out the more than century-old hotel. It's also been featured in many television shows, including Ghost Tours of Kansas and Haunted Rooms America. Coming in at number 2, we have McIntyre Villa. The McIntyre Villa is one of the unusual and historic houses built in the city of Atchison. It was built in 1889 for John McIntyre, a wealthy manufacturer of harnesses and saddles. He did a great deal of business with wagon trains plying the overland trails. John McIntyre's first wife, Alice, died in 1892. He married his second wife, Anna Conlon, a widow with 3 sons, and after John's death in 1902, Anna continued living in the home until her death in 1916. During her ownership, the house was home to many of her relatives, with lots of children as well. Around 1925, Anna's brother, Judge Charles J. Conlon, a prominent Atchison lawyer, and his family made the villa their home. In 1952, the McIntyre Villa was purchased by Miss Isabel Altus, a retired professional violinist and eccentric. She lacked the financial resources to be able to restore the home, and shortly before her death, she sold the home to George Gerardi in 1969, who started to rehabilitate the old estate. Many people, past and present, who have lived in and visited the home have experienced many paranormal experiences. There have been figures being seen in windows when no one is home, lights turning on and off in the tower which doesn't have electricity, a speaker getting thrown off the counter, and boxes mysteriously moving on their own. Sounds of slamming doors throughout the night, footsteps walking down the hallway on the second floor throughout the night, the feeling of being watched, drastic temperature changes, voices, the scent of a woman's perfume, and the hunt of cigarettes. The number of encounters and confirmed hauntings seen and heard around this home is crazy, and it's considered to be one of the most active paranormal homes in all of the US. The amount of activity in this home makes it a hub for investigators, mediums, psychics, and ghost hunters. They offer ghost tours of the home, and you can stay overnight to try and encounter these spirits. And finally, in at number 1, we have Sallie House. The Sallie House is said to be the most haunted place in Kansas. This home was built in the turn of the century and is located in the city of Atchison. After being built, the home was bought by the Atchison physician who worked from his home. The front served as an office space and examination rooms, and the upstairs is where the doctor and his family lived. One day, a frantic mother arrived at the home carrying her young daughter Sally. The child had collapsed from severe abdominal pain. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis, but there was no time to delay surgery. Sally unfortunately passed away on the operating table. For years after, many believe Sally stayed to haunt the home, and the haunting grew infamous in 1993 when the house was rented to a young couple. It started when the couple's dog would growl at nothing and make even louder growls when near the upstairs nursery. Things began to take a violent turn when fires broke out in the house and a series of sinister attacks on the husband began. The former operating area would feel extremely cold, and objects would visibly move when the young man came close. He could feel scratches on his chest and abdomen, but the ghost never attacked the wife or baby. Not only did the former residents experience the paranormal activity, but locals and other visitors of the home have experienced objects moving on their own, mysterious coldness, physical touches, video and investigative equipment that stopped working, trained guide dogs refusing to enter the nursery, and unexplained scratches or bruising on their bodies during and after their visits. Psychics have visited the home, and many have confirmed the presence of spirits in the home and have even communicated with them, and many have entered as skeptics and left believers. waivers. Due to the number of experiences in the home, it's gained a lot of media coverage from television channels including A&E, the Travel Channel, the Discovery Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel. The home is not currently occupied but holds many guided ghost tours for both daytime and even overnight visits for the ghost lovers and paranormal investigators. Beware though, because a waiver is required due to the potential for personal injury, but no serious injuries have been reported since the last tenant in 1993. In at number 5 we have Whispers Estate. The Whispers Estate was built around 1894, and between 1899 and 1901 is when Dr. George and Sarah White moved in. George was a successful physician and ran his practice from their home. The two adopted many orphaned children, and unfortunately several passed away in the house over the years. Some of the children they took in were troubled. Many of them passed away in the bedrooms and other areas of the home, and even some of Dr. White's patients have been said to have also passed while in the home. Dr. White practiced in the home for over 25 years, so it's probable but unknown how many over the years had passed in the home. In the early 2000s, the home underwent renovations and a lot of bizarre activity began. Many claim that lights would flicker on and off, footsteps would be heard stomping around on the second floor, and as time went on the activity escalated. To this day, people reserve time to come and experience all this paranormal activity and are encouraged to write down any experiences they had while in the home, and these accounts are posted to the Whispers Estate's official Facebook page. You can go through the page and find creepy photos people have taken that show demonic figures, ghost-like creatures, and even orbs. It's also pretty common for the guests to be scratched up by unseen fingernails or touched by an unseen hand. The estate earned the Whispers moniker after the numerous guests that experienced somebody whispering in their ear, somebody they couldn't see. Due to the amount of people who have passed at the home in its early days, it's like there are a number of different spirits that haunt the estate to this day. The Whispers Estate is known as the 4th most haunted house in the United States, but many who have visited believe it to be the most haunted house in the entire country. In at number 4 we have Rhodes Hotel. The Rhodes Hotel was established in 1893 and was named after the first owners, Clara and Newton Rhodes. The youngest child in the Rhodes family, Everett, passed in one of the second-story bedrooms after contracting tuberculosis at 18 years old. Soon after their daughter's death, Newton unfortunately died, and it's believed he had died inside of the house. After Newton's passing, Clara turned the house into a dual brothel and speakeasy. It's said that one of the ladies of the night, Sarah, still haunts her bedroom tucked behind the stairs on the second floor. After Clara's death, the family home was opened as a hotel in the late 1800s and was meant to house those flocking to East Central Indiana during the natural gas boom. It's even believed that John Dillinger and Al Capone stopped at the hotel for a stay after hitching a ride on a train to Indiana. Not only did the family pass in their home, but a preacher by the name of Lester Poor supposedly hanged himself in the attic during the time when the home was converted to a hotel. But many believe his death could have been a murder. Due to the hotel's rich history, many locals and visitors have experienced paranormal activity, and everyone in the town knew that many spirits that passed in the building still haunt it to this day. The hotel closed its doors in 1937 and the property remained in the Rhodes family hands but sat empty for more than 30 years. The hotel and its contents were eventually auctioned off and it landed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the hotel saw 3 owners before the Haleys took it over for restoration. The Rhodes Hotel was purchased by Clint and Linda Haley in 1995, and they heard rumors about the haunting of the hotel, but this didn't faze them. They were more worried about the work they'd have to do to restore the home. The Haleys claim that they didn't encounter any paranormal activity, but many find that hard to believe. The hotel was up for sale again in 2017 when a man by the name of Couch took it over for his charity. Couch had launched the Lost Limbs Foundation 4 years earlier, which raised funds for prosthetic limbs for children. To this day, Couch's charity has owned and run the hotel. Not only had it been named among Indiana's most haunted places, but the hotel is consistently booked for private and paranormal investigations. The overnight investigation tickets can get up to $200, and this hotel attracts people from across the country. There have been many investigators that believe there is extensive activity in this old hotel, and people have captured a figure-like shadow moving across the living room curtains with the use of night vision cameras. Most commonly, people hear whispers and the second floor creaking when no one is inside. Unlike the Haleys, Couch said he's seen and heard supernatural happenings in the hotel since moving onto the property in 2017. He's heard footsteps on the staircase, the property camera has turned off randomly, and picked up voices before the footage flickers back on. Once, while hosting an investigation, Couch said he witnessed one of many Victorian dolls left behind from a previous owner jump off of its chair. In at number 3 we have Avon Bridge. The Avon Bridge is known to be haunted by almost every local living in the area. It is a massive trip-arch railroad trestle spinning a rural road over White Lick Creek. The bridge is a fascinating landmark in Hendricks County with lots of legends and history surrounding it, some more sinister than others. There are a few historical facts about the bridge that we do know. It was built in 1906 off County Road 625, was designed by W.M. Dunn, and is still used today. Many haunted stories surround this bridge and the area surrounding it. One story claims that a mother had been walking on the tracks and fell to her death. The mother's wailing could be heard when you drive under the bridge. It is common for many locals to honk when driving under the bridge in an effort to muffle her screams. Another story is that a drunk rail worker slipped during construction and was buried alive in the wet cement. The tale is that when a train goes over the bridge, people claim to still hear his moaning. Many locals say that if you go near the bridge at night, you will hear moaning and can see a ghostly figure of a ghost, or even 2 or 3 at a time. If you're traveling near the bridge on a hot summer day, you may be witness to the ghost tears streaming down the concrete. Many people don't even refer to it as the Avon Bridge. It's often called the Haunted Avon Bridge because of the number of accounts of ghost sightings and constant sounds of the moans and screams heard from the ghosts that haunt the bridge. In at number 2 we have James Allison Mansion. The James Allison Mansion was built for James Allison, and it was a dream home, done in a grand design and style that exhibited James's wealth and importance. James was an important figure in the auto and plane industry, greatly helping in the development of cars and airplanes. He founded the Presto Light Company, which produced the first efficient headlight for early automobiles, and was a founding partner in Carl Fisher's Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He also started Allison Engineering Company, which evolved and transformed into an aircraft engine make known today as the Allison division of Rolls-Royce. James purchased the 65-acre estate, and he and his wife Sarah built this glorious mansion, starting construction in 1911 and finishing in 1913. The massive home had an elevator, a billiard room, an indoor pool in the basement, a breakfast room, a library, a grand kitchen, and even pumped-in ice water. 15 years after the Allisons built their forever home, James then fell in love with his secretary, and he divorced his wife Sarah in 1928. Only a month later, James married this former employee, Lucille Musset. However, James contracted a fatal case of pneumonia and died shortly after marrying his second wife at the age of 56. In 1936, the estate went up for sale, and that same year it was bought by Sisters of St. Francis of Oldenburg. The former Allison home became a home for the college's library, administrative offices, classrooms, and sleeping quarters for the sisters. There have been many things seen and heard throughout the years since it became a college. There was a girl who had drowned in the pool in the basement, and James's untimely death in the home. Both people could be haunting this mansion to this day. It's said that people who pass through a sudden accident or a bout of illness, sometimes their spirits hang around, perhaps unaware that they have died or not wanting to accept their deaths, and this is the case for both the little girl and James. The entity of a little girl is often seen throughout the mansion. There are strange cries that are heard from the basement, in the attic, and objects seem to move by themselves and can completely disappear. There is another entity seen and could possibly be more than one, and they like to take keys and objects and move them to odd places. The library in particular is often completely rearranged, like the books and furniture. And finally, in at number 1 we have French Lick Springs Hotel. Nestled in the small resort town of French Lick sits the massive French Lick Springs Hotel. This legendary hotel was constructed in 1845 and is a crown jewel of the southern Indiana town, but there's more to this resort than meets the eye. This Indiana hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places in the state. Thomas Taggart was a mayor at the time and purchased the hotel in 1888. After purchasing the hotel, he added luxurious furnishings, marble floors, and built 2 championship golf courses. During this time, Taggart became the Democratic National Chairman, and the hotel became the unofficial headquarters of the Democratic National Party. In 1931, Franklin Roosevelt visited the hotel because of its Democratic standing and won the presidency a mere year later. Over the years, the hotel and the work Taggart put into it made it one of the most prominent hotels in the area, and even ran the West Baden Springs Hotel out of the business. Unfortunately, in 1916, Taggart passed away, but according to local legend, his spirit has never left the building. Taggart died in 1916, but that hasn't stopped rumors of sightings of this famous hotel owner. Guests and employees frequently encounter strange and paranormal activity throughout the hotel, and they believe it is caused by Taggart himself. Many spot his ghostly figure near the service elevator and can pick up a strong scent of pipe tobacco. Others claim they may witness his spirit riding down the hallway on a horse and making noise inside the ballroom. Some hear noises and others encounter his ghost, though usually both don't occur at the same time. Not only is Taggart's ghost living in the hotel, but there are also rumors of a former bellhop that lingers around the hotel. Many believe that he was a current employee until they saw old photos of him hanging on the wall, or were told no bellhops were on duty when people had encountered him. Employees and guests say that it's pretty hard not to encounter some sort of activity when you're in the hotel, and due to the vast amount of paranormal sightings are why it's considered by many to be the most haunted place in Indiana and one of the most haunted places in all of the United States.
Number 5 on this list is the Poly Highway. This highway is super unique in how it's haunted and honestly really interesting. Quoting Only in Your State, they write, "Nowhere is there a higher concentration of varied ghost stories than along Ohio's beautiful and haunted Poly Highway. From ancient Hawaiian legends to major battle sites, the highway meanders through the Kewalo Mountains between Honolulu and the Windward Coast, and it's one of the most ghastly places in all of Hawaii. It's said that Pele and the demigod Kamapua, a half-man, half-pig, had a bad breakup and agreed to never see each other again. Legend has it that you cannot take pork over the Poly Highway because it means that you're symbolically taking Kamapua from one side of the island to the other. If you try to bring pork across, your car will stop at some point along the journey and an old woman with a dog will appear. To continue along your way, you must feed the pork to the dog." Alright, so first, Hawaii is freaking awesome. I've done so many videos about so many haunted places, but never once have I heard a story about a haunted road where you need to feed pork to a dog. Like, shout out to our Hawaiian ghosts for switching things up. Also, the fact that this road symbolizes the breakup of two gods is pretty awesome. Pele, for those who don't know, is a Hawaiian deity of volcanoes and fire, and as the story tells us, Kamapua is a demigod in his own right. Now, as cool as this story is, I personally wouldn't want to be messing with the god of volcanoes or a half-pig, half-man superhuman, so if you do go down this road, do as the story says, and ditch the meat. Number 4 on this list is the Kaimuki House. Every place that's any place needs to have at least one haunted house, and this is Hawaii's. Only in Your State once again writes, "The famous haunted Kaimuki House, located on the corner of 8th and Harding on a foundation of 2 beds of lava rock, is known to many as one of the most haunted places on the island. The house itself looks relatively normal, but the story behind it is anything but. The creature said to reside in this house is a kasha, a man-eating ghost from Japanese folklore, and the stories surrounding its haunting of the Kaimuki House have been extensively documented. The original tale tells of a young couple who moved into the home and their neighbors who, upon hearing loud bangs and crashes, suspected domestic violence and called the police. When the police arrived, the couple claimed that they were being attacked by a force that they couldn't see." So guys, I did some research and looked into this kasha creature, and this is really interesting. One, if it is a kasha, then it's pretty far from home because they're said to reside in Japan. And 2, this one functions slightly differently than a typical kasha would. This creature is said to be a giant, grotesque looking cat thing that runs on 2 legs and looks super mischievous. Typically, a kasha will steal corpses of those who are already dead, specifically people who performed evil deeds in their life. Therefore, it's pretty uncommon for a kasha to actually attack people who are still alive, as the couple in our story reported. All this being said though, kasha are considered to be servants of hell, so I'm not going to put anything past them. This house is the most haunted in all of Hawaii and should be avoided at all costs. Number 3 on this list is Mackenzie State Recreation Area. It's honestly really too bad that this place is haunted because from what I've read, it's quite beautiful. 13 acres of lush Hawaiian nature by the water. Beautiful lookout spots, ironwood trees, but also a bunch of ghosts. Apparently this area has seen some horrible tragedies over the years. Murders and just other horrible things have taken place here and left their mark. The most famous story is of a couple who was recently engaged. They went out to this park and were staying overnight doing a little camping trip. For reasons unknown to the police, this couple was beaten to death and left there. This could have been by a person, or it could have also been done by a demon. Their ghosts are certainly some of the most commonly spotted, but other apparitions are also seen occasionally. It should also be noted that just general scary things happen here on the daily. Screams coming from thin air, drastic changes in temperature, the feeling of a dark aura just hanging over top of you. All of this is part of the norm at this park. And like I said, it's really too bad that it had to be this way, because in pictures, this area just looks freaking gorgeous. For obvious reasons though, I can't possibly recommend going here, and I do advise you to stick to some of the other gorgeous spots Hawaii has to offer. Number 2 on this list is Kalihi Valley. The Kalihi Valley is honestly super beautiful and has some amazing natural terrain just like our park. I wouldn't want to go at nighttime though, because if you do, you may run into some night marchers. Legend says that the Hawaiian night marchers are a group of ghostly apparitions resembling ancient Hawaiian warriors. These warriors are heavily armed with spears and clubs and other archaic weapons and bang loud war drums as they march throughout the island. They appear at night with the goal of searching for their next fight and are fated to do this forever until they find it. These warriors were killed many years ago, but it's believed that a curse hangs over them and they're just forever gonna walk this island until they can defend it one final time. The problem is that nobody's really coming to attack Hawaii these days, and these warriors don't have any enemies to slay. Now, the sightings of these phantoms are honestly not as rare as you might think. Many longtime Hawaiian residents have reported having at least one encounter with the night marchers before, with some tourists even saying that they've had run-ins with them. These people are kind of lucky to be living and telling the tale though, because the scariest part about these night marchers is that your life could actually be on the line. It's widely believed that if you were to make direct eye contact with a night marcher, then either you or someone you love is gonna suffer a very grim fate. The only way to save yourself if you happen to stumble upon these warriors, as funny as it may seem, is to lie completely flat on the ground as a sign of respect. I personally don't really know why getting a face full of dirt pleases these ancient warriors, but apparently it does. If you are gonna go check out this valley, then just make sure you do it during the daytime and avoid these night marchers altogether. And finally, number 1 on this list is Kaniana Cave. This cave has seen some things, man. Only in Your State says once again, Kaniana Cave, a truly mysterious sight. This sinister story features Kamaholia, a shapeshifter who could transform himself from a shark into a man. He and his human wife gave birth to a son, Nanawa. When the son discovered his taste for human flesh, like all man-eating sharks, he disguised himself as a human in order to trick his victims. He would drag his victims into the cave and eat them. In ancient times, the Hawaiian people were forbidden from entering the cave, fearful that they would be attacked and eaten by this shark man. When residents later found out about Nanawa's true identity, that he was a shark man, they captured and killed him. Today, the souls of those who died here are said to haunt the area, and according to local storytellers, Kaniana Cave is a repository for psychic energy. This is one location you just won't want to visit at night in Hawaii, or alone ever. So we got a shark into a man, into a sick killer with the souls of those who have died. No, 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 and another big no. This cave is just way too much for anyone to be going to. Hawaii is out here striking us again with the uniqueness, which I definitely thank them for, but this one is just far too much. I personally do not want to have to deal with the dead souls of those who were eaten by a shark man, or possibly even run into the ghost of said shark demon thing. Kaniana Cave is 100% on the do not travel list and should probably just be boarded up by the sounds of it. Number 5 on this list is Villa Paula. This haunted place is located in Miami and has quite the interesting guest in the backyard. Thrillist says, this stately white mansion was originally constructed as the Cuban consulate in the mid-1920s, home to Consul Domingo Millard and his wife, Paula. The Cuban-born Paula was known to spend her days playing piano and drinking Cuban coffee until she died from complications from a leg amputation in 1932. Legend has it that Domingo interred his late wife in a sarcophagus laid in the backyard. The sarcophagus is still there now, covered by ficus tree roots and nearly impossible to reach. Whether or not it actually contains her mortal remains is debatable at best, but reports of her ghost persist. It's said her ghost is in different rooms there, says History Miami's Dr. Paul George. People who've lived at Villa Paula since have had existential kinds of experiences. Among them, phantom coffee smells and piano playing, a one-legged woman roaming about as well. So there is a literal sarcophagus just chilling in this person's backyard. Can you imagine having that just show up on the house listing? I'd be like, no, we are not okay with that. I'm kind of surprised that no one has gone to go deal with the sarcophagus before. I mean, you can't just leave this thing down there like that and expect the ghost to just go away. I would imagine that Paula's spirit is probably tied to the sarcophagus, and in turn it's tied to the area. Granted, I do kind of understand why no one wants to dig it up. Think about all the crazy stuff that's happened with the pyramids. You dig up this sarcophagus and you might end up being cursed for life, which is obviously something that nobody wants. But now we're left in this awkward place where we can't get rid of the ghost, but at the same time can't live here either. That's why I'm recommending to all of you watching, just avoid Villa Paula altogether. Number 4 on this list is the Blue Anchor Pub. So this is an interesting one because this pub didn't actually start in Florida. Thrillist says this pub was built in 1840s London during Jack the Ripper times, so it should be no surprise that it's haunted. The story goes that the bar was raised in London, but its wooden interiors were sent to New York City and then onto this sleepy Florida town in 1996. Little did anyone know that the pub's original elements came with the ghost of Bertha Starkley, a cheating wife who was murdered by her husband. Today, she can be heard rattling pots, knocking things over, and wailing in the middle of the night at the Blue Anchor. Every night around 10 p.m., the time that she was murdered, Bertha likes to remind everyone she's still here, so the current owners ring the ship's bell to scare her away. So, first thing, I've never actually heard of that before, where they take a building from one continent and then just decide to move it over to another continent. This bar must look pretty cool on the inside to go to all that trouble though. Obviously, this was a bit of a mistake and everyone would have been better served if we relocated this thing straight to the dump. Bertha doesn't care if it's in London or America or anywhere. As long as the structure of this pub is still intact, her ghost will still be floating around, which makes it very hard to enjoy a night out at this place. Like, imagine drowning several pints, going to take a piss, and then getting ambushed by some 1800s ghost in the bathroom with your pee-pee hanging out. Like, I don't know if I'd ever be able to recover from that, folks. Number 3 on this list is St. Augustine's Lighthouse. Ah yes, the haunted lighthouse, a true classic. Thrillist says St. Augustine's iconic lighthouse is a Florida landmark built in 1874. But climb up its 219 steps, and it's not just the views that will take your breath away. First, there's the ghost of Joseph Andrew, the original lighthouse keeper who fell to his death while painting the 165-foot tower. Then there are the Pity's 2 daughters who were playing with a building cart when it broke loose and slid into the nearby bay, drowning them both. While the girls giggle and run up and down the lighthouse steps, Joseph has been reported smoking cigars at the top of the lighthouse, keeping watch over his forever home. You know guys, if I had to be a ghost, then being Joseph wouldn't be the worst. I get to look out at the pretty scenery at the top of my lighthouse where hardly anyone bothers me, and I get to smoke cigars all day. Like, obviously I wouldn't want to be a ghost, but if I had to be, then this wouldn't be that bad. Either way, I'm not a ghost now. I am very much a human being, and if I want to stay a human being, then I recommend avoiding this place. It can obviously be very jarring to see 2 little ghost girls running around, and even though all of these ghosts are supposed to be pretty chill, we know that the paranormal can be unpredictable. I'm sure that there are tons of other non-haunted Florida lighthouses around if you're really pining for a good view. Number 2 on this list is Fort East Martello. If you don't like dolls, then you really won't like this one, guys. Thrillist says, if there is one rule all Floridians follow, it's do not mess with Robert the doll. The 4-foot figurine has terrorized anyone who hasn't taken him seriously since he was gifted to artist Robert Jean Otto in 1904. Otto blamed any mischievous act around him on Robert the doll, effectively coining the oft-repeated Robert did it mantra. The doll currently holds court inside Fort East Martello, where he lives inside a glass case surrounded by a constant soundtrack of haunting xylophone music. The room evokes a heavy air immediately upon entering, and the walls are papered with apology notes from cocky tourists who've dared cross the world's most haunted plaything. Even the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, felt Robert's wrath when he suffered a series of health mishaps shortly after dissing the doll on his reality show. I don't like dolls, folks, especially the haunted variety, so this entry obviously had to make the list. Clearly it curses you after you see it because people literally have to come back here and ask for its forgiveness. I don't know if the notes work or not, but I guess that's all you can do when you're dealing with a haunted doll. Hopefully this doll can just chill out and stop haunting people, but in the meantime, I just flat out avoid going to this place in Florida altogether. And number 1 on this list is Casa Monica Resort and Spa. It really sucks that this place is so haunted because it's truly beautiful. Thrillist says St. Augustine's fanciest hotel is also its most haunted. In fact, this 5-star Mediterranean revival haunt is a hotbed of spectral activity. Children are heard running along the 4th floor, but no one is there. The radio in the Ponce de Leon suite randomly comes on, but no one's there. Guests of room 411 wake up to people staring at them, but no one's there. But it's the 3-story Flagler suite high in the tower that's most haunted. Maids have seen a child's handprint appear on the 1st floor bathroom mirror, and after knocking, one heard a man say, "We've been expecting you," from an empty bedroom. Its spookiest claim to fame, however, is the male ghost staring out of the top tower window. He's believed to be the ghost of one of 2 people, either Franklin Smith, the architect who built the hotel, or Henry Flagler, the man who purchased it. I personally don't care if it's the architect, the man who purchased it, or God. Anyone who says, "I've been waiting for you as I enter an empty bedroom," it's not the type of individual I want to be around. Also, where are these children coming from and what are those sounds? Okay, so you want to tell me a scary story where the architect of the building fell in love with his work and then when he died, his ghost stayed here. Alright, fine, I can buy that, I can believe that, but like, what are the children doing here? What do they have to do with this place and the architect? Maybe this is just one of those spots where it doesn't matter what happened here, it doesn't matter what will happen here in the future, it's just always destined to be haunted. Number 5 on this list is the Molly Brown House. If you live in Denver, then there is no way that you aren't familiar with this haunted place. Thrillist says, you've no doubt heard of the Molly Brown House and likely passed it on the street once or twice too. Molly Brown was a notable member of Denver's elite and perhaps known best for being a Titanic survivor, and despite allegedly living a relatively happy life, visitors to the museum and staff have reported quite a bit of strange happenings. Some have smelled what's believed to be husband J.J. Brown's pipe or have witnessed lights off and on the fritz, and staff have reported furniture being seemingly rearranged. Sometimes figures can even be seen roaming the house. A visit is worth it alone for the history, but the potential for getting a bit spooked or walking into a cold spot is definitely definitely an added bonus. We once again have one of those locations where no one has any idea why it's haunted, it just is. Maybe it's the connection to the Titanic that has got this place acting funky. Obviously, that was a very unnatural occurrence and took the lives of tons of people in a very sad way. So I could believe that the Titanic and the survivor of the Titanic plays some role into why this place is haunted the way that it is. Good news is that this isn't the worst haunting that you can run into. Like, yes, you will get a little scared for sure. You might smell something funny, or have a ghost pull something on you, or even maybe have small valuables go missing. But ultimately, you probably shouldn't be dragged to the underworld here by some shadow demon or anything like that. So I guess if you were to visit any place on this list, then this one wouldn't be the worst. Just be prepared for what's coming, because if you aren't, then it could leave you with some serious mental trauma. Number 4 on this list is Phantom Canyon Road. You need to be very careful on this road because there is a good chance you could suffer a serious crash if you aren't. Thrillist says a haunted road is one thing, but a haunted road in Colorado means you're likely on the edge of a mountain and at some serious elevation. Phantom Canyon Road is a detour off the Gold Belt Tour byway connecting Cripple Creek and Florence, and was originally the railroad for that route. As you drive along, you can clearly see the ghost towns of Wilbur, Adelaide, and Glenbrook, and legend has it that the reason for Phantom Canyon's name is credited to sightings of a man wearing a prison uniform walking along the tracks in the 1890s. The man supposedly had been executed at the Colorado State Penitentiary a few days earlier. So yeah guys, you better have your wits about you, because if you don't, this ghost might come out and startle the crap out of you, and then the next thing you know, you're gonna be face deep into a tree somewhere. It also just adds to the horror ambiance that you're driving past several ghost towns along the way. Like, of course, they just had to be on the side of the road as you're also getting stalked by this ghost prisoner. No one really knows what this prisoner wants with you, but let's face it, I can't imagine it's good. My dude was executed back in the day, so for one, what he did was probably pretty bad to warrant a punishment like that, and then secondly, he literally got executed, and I can only guess that his ghost probably isn't too pleased about that. Y'all need to be especially careful if you're driving down this road, because at any point this guy could pop out. Number 3 on this list is Central City Masonic Cemetery. Of course we had to have a cemetery on this list. No haunted place list would be complete without at least one of them. Thrillist says, founded as a mining town in the late 1800s, Central City is now known as a destination for those looking to head to the hills for a gambling fix in the casinos that now dot the area. But one thing hasn't changed. The woman in black who twice a year appears in this hilltop cemetery above the town. Known as the Columbine Lady, she comes to visit the grave of John Cameron, a prominent former resident of Central City who died in 1884. Some believe she is his fiancée, appearing to leave flowers for her lost love on November 1st, the anniversary of Cameron's death, and April 5th, a date for which the significance remains a mystery, much like the woman herself. This place is safe to go to if, of course, you do not go during these times. She's been coming for a long time, and anyone who tried to interfere with her has had to pay the price. Now, people kind of suspect that she was in a relationship with John Cameron, but there's also another theory. Many people think that John actually wronged her in his life, and that this woman in black comes twice a year to double check that John is still dead and hasn't come back to life by some means. Pretty scary tale for sure, one that you probably don't want to get involved with. Number 2 on this list is the Broadmoor. Located in Colorado Springs, this hotel would be freaking awesome if it wasn't so haunted. Thrillist says this sprawling 5-star hotel has a lot to offer for anyone seeking a relaxing and indulgent getaway. But along with the golf course, spa, and nearby zoo, there's one feature you won't find in any brochure. sure. Staff and guests alike have reported the presence of a woman, often in the penthouse where Julia Penrose, co-founder of the property, once lived. While not confirmed, Penrose's death is said to have been surrounded by a strange occurrence in which she went missing and was later found, confused and shaking in the woods nearby with no memory of how she got there. She passed away a week later, and perhaps her spirit remains, watching over the property and seeking answers about her own mysterious death. Now I'm wondering, man, how did Penrose die? Like, this whole story feels like a movie or something like that. I truly think somebody needs to get in here and investigate what the heck happened here. Cause like, should we be scared of the region because this is gonna happen again? Was Julia doing something specific before she disappeared, and should we avoid doing that thing? There are just so many questions that need to be answered here, and sadly I can't do it from the comfort of Toronto. That being said, I'm also not trying to end up like Julia, and therefore will be leaving this job to somebody far more qualified. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. A truly picturesque mansion, one that's been standing for over 100 years and one that's home to a ghostly spirit. Thrillist says this sprawling stone mansion, built in 1891, is often rented for weddings and events due to its impressive structural beauty and picturesque prairie views. But it's also a historic property and somewhat of a museum of the times, with a bit of paranormal activity sprinkled in. The ghost of Julia Kistler, daughter of F. Kistler, who bought the property in 1926, is said to haunt the home, with visitors and staff alike reporting hearing a woman's sobs, seeing a silhouette figure moving about when the mansion was otherwise vacant, and lights sporadically turning on and off. I don't know about you guys, but during my wedding ceremony, I want to hear beautiful sounding music, not the sobs of some ghost woman thing. Apparently she's crying all the time, and this woman's emotions are not something to play with. There's a story where once several children were playing around here. There was a wedding ceremony scheduled here for later that day, and the children were off doing what kids do before the proceedings got underway. They ran into this ghost crying, and then they started to make fun of her. They were rude and definitely unkind, but they also didn't deserve what she did next. It's said that in a fit of rage, she flew inside their bodies and possessed each and every one of them for a short time, showing them things that were truly terrifying. Things that have ultimately changed those boys' lives and altered their mentality forever. Any ghost that's capable of doing something like that, that's one that I don't want to be around.
Coming in at number 5, we have Padre Hotel. The Padre Hotel, located in Bakersfield, has a reputation for being a terrifying place to stay. Many admit they were skeptical at first, but the hotel lived up to the paranormal stories. The hotel was first opened in 1928. Since then, it's seen many tragedies take place within its walls. The local archives hold many stories of those who have lost their lives there. These guests now haunt the hotel, leaving behind signs that they still stay here to this day. There have been so many incidents here, it's sometimes unclear who was contacting the guests. In the 1950s, there was a large fire where many perished. Some say that in spots around the hotel, you feel an intense panic and sense of terror come over you, as if you yourself were trapped in the blaze. The upper floors are said to have the most paranormal activity, in particular the 7th floor. It is said to be a hotbed for unexplained paranormal happenings. Many guests even request to stay on this floor to see if they can experience these terrors for themselves. The hotel's general manager has shared some of the terrifying experiences she has had there. She said one night while she was making her rounds, she opened a door to a closet. Suddenly, she had an overwhelming feeling of cold and immediate adrenaline. She said her hair was standing up on her arm. Suddenly the door slammed and she ran as fast as she could out of the hotel. She said she told a couple of people who found her outside. She was clearly frightened and everyone wanted to know what she saw. She said since then she has rarely told the story. She has worked there for over 10 years and has never felt fear like this before. Others have witnessed recurring ghosts, stories that fit together from strangers who have never met. One common sight at the hotel is a man stood on the roof. Many see him as they first arrive at the hotel, thinking he might be doing work on the roof. They think nothing of it. He has been seen many times by different guests. Those who ask what he is passengers doing up there are told no one is allowed on the roof after a tragic accident had occurred at the hotel years ago. Many believe it is the man's ghost who keeps appearing to guests as a warning to not enter the hotel. In at number 4 we have Alcatraz Island. Alcatraz Island is one of the most notorious prisons in history and can be found on the San Francisco Bay. Before it became a federal penitentiary, it was discovered by Spanish naval officer and explorer Juan Manuel de Ayala, who founded the island in 1775 and built several small buildings and other minor structures on the island. In 1850, President Millard Fillmore ordered Alcatraz Island to be set aside specifically as a United States military reservation for military purposes following the Mexican-American War. In 1861, the island held hundreds of Civil War prisoners. Then, in 1934, the prison opened and operated until March 1963, and as of lately has become a major tourist attraction. Alcatraz is the site of a now abandoned federal prison, the oldest operating lighthouse on the west coast of the United States, and early military fortifications. Landmarks on the island include the main cell house, dining hall, lighthouse, the ruins of the warden's house, social hall, parade ground, recreation yard, water tower, and other small buildings. Some of the most infamous criminals were kept at Alcatraz over the years, and due to the strong currents around the island and the ice-cold water temperatures, it made escaping nearly impossible. Some of the most notorious criminals held at Alcatraz include Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and Bumpy Johnson. Contrary to popular belief, it was in fact possible to escape and swim to shore. Extremely hard, but possible. During the 29 years of operation, the penitentiary claimed that no prisoner successfully escaped, but many question that. A total of 36 prisoners made 14 different escape attempts. 23 were caught alive, 6 were shot and killed during their escape. 2 drowned, and 5 are listed as missing and presumed drowned, but that is highly debated. Many believe of the 5 missing, all or at least some of them were able to make it to land and were never caught. Due to the amount of history and deaths in and around the island, many believe there are dozens of spirits that roam in the abandoned buildings and even in death are unable to escape the island. Alcatraz is a popular tourist attraction because of its ghost sightings, weird occurrences, and history, and they offer daily tours to see the island and its buildings. In at number 3 we have the Queen Mary. The iconic Queen Mary ship is located in Long Beach and is one of the most haunted destinations in the United States. The ship was first christened in 1934 by Queen Mary herself, and it was retired more than 3 decades later. It has since been converted into a hotel where guests can sleep surrounded by the original wood paneling and portholes. If you do plan on staying on the ship, you may not be the only guest here though. There are multiple stories of different spirits that haunt the ship. There are so many different rooms on the ship that are haunted by many different ghosts, including the Mauritania room, the Mayfair room, boiler room number 4, and the first class swimming pool, just to name a few. Stateroom B340 in particular was a problem long before the Queen Mary became a hotel. In 1948, British third class passenger Walker J. Adamson passed away in the room, and the details of his death are unknown. Later in 1966, a woman staying in the room reported that she had awoken when the bed covers were pulled off her and she saw a man standing at the foot of her bed. She screamed and rang for the steward, but the man quickly vanished into thin air. Years later, guests staying in the room reported hearing someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night, seeing bathroom lights mysteriously turn on, and even the hotel's maids would often find the bathroom water running even when no one had stayed in the room for days. Another area that is a paranormal hotspot is Shaft Alley or Hatch Door number 13, and it was the site of a gruesome accident where a crewman was crushed to death. His ghost is regularly seen around the area now. People often report hearing the sound of someone running behind them and whistling, while others have noticed that spots of grease that appear to look like fingerprints appear on their face, and some have even seen a figure of a bearded man in blue overalls that looks like a crewman. Due to the amount of paranormal activity, many ghost enthusiasts, investigators, and TV shows frequently visit the ship to stay and partake in the ghost tours they offer. In at number 2 we have the Roosevelt Hotel. The Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood was made famous due to the number of celebrities, past and present, who have stayed there, including one of the most famous women in history, Marilyn Monroe, who stayed at the hotel for 2 years early in her career and posed for her first commercial photography shoot by the hotel's pool. Many believe her spirit, among others, still linger through the halls of the hotel. Some of the most famous people in history have stayed at this notorious hotel, including Charlie Chaplin, Shirley Temple, Prince, Ernest Hemingway, Brad Pitt, and Angelina Jolie, just to name a few. The hotel opened in 1927 and is the oldest continually operating hotel in Los Angeles and is named after the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. It is a staple in Hollywood due to it being on Hollywood Boulevard, Boulevard and being so close to the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the famous Chinese theater. The first ever Academy Award ceremony was held at the hotel on May 16, 1929, inside the Blossom Ballroom. It was a private ceremony open only to the Academy members, with a total of 270 people in attendance. At the time, the Oscar nickname for the award had not yet been invented. It would be introduced 4 years later. Many guests have experienced paranormal activities while visiting the hotel, like feeling cold spots, receiving mysterious phone calls, and capturing orbs in their photographs. There are many rumors of hauntings and ghosts at the hotel involving celebrities who have previously stayed there, like Montgomery Clift, Carole Lombard, and Errol Flynn. Other stories involve a little girl in a blue dress named Caroline that have been seen by multiple hotel guests and employees. Montgomery Clift's spirit has been blamed for patting guests' shoulders and watching the maids who clean his old room 928, where he stayed for a total of 3 months while filming From Here to Eternity. Carole Lombard has also been spotted floating around the upper floors. The most famous spirit of the hotel is, of course, Marilyn Monroe. Many people believe she still roams the hotel and can be found in her old room 1200, and many have witnessed her ghostly figure in the mirror. This hotel is both famous and notorious, and if you're brave enough, you can stay in these celebrities' old rooms. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles has been known by many to be a haunted hotel, but gained massive media and global attention when the popular Netflix documentary came out regarding the disappearance of Elisa Lam, who went missing while staying at the hotel. The case was extremely mysterious and made many question the sinister background of this notorious hotel. The hotel was built in 1924 as a destination for business travelers and tourists. It flourished throughout the 1940s, but saw a decline as the nearby Skid Row became extremely overpopulated and drugs and crime ran rapid. As many as 10,000 homeless people lived within a 4-mile radius from the hotel. For decades, this hotel had a reputation for violence and death due to the number of mysterious cases that have happened throughout the years at the Cecil. The first documented case of someone taking their own life occurred in 1927 when Percy Cook shot himself while inside his hotel room after failing to reconcile with his wife and child. The next one occurred in 1931, and more happened throughout the 1940s and 50s. Not only have many people taken their own life in this hotel, but many unresolved murders and mysterious deaths have also happened here. Many people believe all these occurrences make this one of the most haunted places in California due to all the souls still roaming around the hotel. One of the most famous true crime cases is that of the Black Dahlia, and it was confirmed in 2015 that Elizabeth Short was seen drinking at the Cecil's bar in the days before her notorious and unsolved murder in 1947. In the 1980s, the hotel had been the residence of one of the most famous serial killers of all time, Richard Ramirez, nicknamed the Night Stalker. Throughout the 1980s, he ran rapid in his killing spree, and he was a regular presence on the Skid Row area. And according to a hotel clerk who claims to have spoken to Richard, he had stayed at the hotel for weeks before his capture in 1985. Another serial killer, Austrian man Jack Underwaker, stayed at the Cecil in 1991, possibly sought to copy Ramirez's crimes. While staying there, he had killed at least 3 women. An astonishing number of people have lost their lives at this notorious hotel, and many deaths remain unsolved to this day. When Elisa Lam's case was made public, it caused even more confusion and questions about what really goes on at this hotel. The Cecil Hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places not only in California, but throughout the world. In at number 5, we have the King Opera House. The King Opera House in Van Buren was built in the late 19th century, but didn't get famous from the shows it hosted or its beautiful interior, but instead the Opera House is noted for its connection to a murder, and there are rumors that it is haunted by the murdered actor. It all began with actor Charles Tolson, who was the owner of the Tolson Stock Company, which was a traveling acting troupe. The troupe had just finished a week of performances at the King Opera House in September 1903, and they were headed out of town to go to another performance. They headed to the train station, and when Tolson made his way to the ticket window, someone called out his name. Dr. William Parman, a well-known local doctor, emerged and shot Tolson with his revolver. Tolson was shot in the hip and the chest, and he was taken to the Fort Smith Hospital, but it was too late, and he died from his injuries. Dr. Parchman's motive for the incident was that he believed his 17-year-old daughter was in love with Tolson, was planning on running away with him, even though Tolson was married and his wife was a member of the acting troupe. Tolson knew Dr. Parchman and his daughter Allie, but there was no proof that he had any intention of eloping with the girl. Parchman was acting based on the information given to him by a vinegar salesman who may have had an interest in the young girl. Parchman was found not guilty of the murder despite there being multiple witnesses witnesses. Interestingly, both Ali and the vinegar salesman left town and were not present for the trial. It's said that Tolson's ghost haunts the King Opera House, which was the location of his last performance. Today, the Opera House is a contributing property to the Van Buren Historic District, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It isn't currently open to the public, but is available to be rented out. In at number 4, we have Toltec Mounds. The Toltec Mounds is a famous historical site in Arkansas and is a National Historic Landmark, one of 4 in the Arkansas State Park system, and this park is the largest and most complex mound site in the state. Arkansas was once the home of a group of people referred to as the Plum Bayou culture by archaeologists and historians. Their existence in the area is a bit of a mystery. These people were not related to the Toltec tribes from Mexico, despite the site's name. The Plum Bayou culture also cannot be traced to any other group of people living in the area when the tribe was active. A total of 18 mounds have been identified in the area, all built between 650 and 1050 AD. One mound stands 49 feet high and another at 39 feet, with many smaller mounds surrounding it. The site was abandoned around 1050 AD and no remnants of the residents exist outside of the Toltec Mounds. Today, the site is still an active archaeological site in the home of Toltec Mounds Archaeological State Park. As for hauntings at the site, if an entire culture disappearing without a trace isn't creepy enough, many visitors to the site have reported the appearance of lights or orbs near the mounds, seeing ghosts and hearing footsteps around the site at night. Many of these findings have been caught on camera and video, and so many paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and haunting enthusiasts have confirmed there is activity in the area. Whether it's from the Lost Society or not, we may never know. The mounds are open daily for visitors, with tours available to learn more about the history and hauntings in the area. In at number 3, we have the Allen House. The Allen House was built back in 1905 and was named after the original owner, Joe Lee Allen, where he lived in the home with his family for many years. Although Joe died in 1917, his wife Caddy stayed in the home with the 3 children Laddle, Lonnie, Lee, and Lewis. Sadly, Laddle took his own life in one of the bedrooms by drinking potassium cyanide, and it was unknown for many years for why she did it. After her death, her mother Caddy Allen kept the room completely closed off from the rest of the house. When Caddy passed in 1954, the property was split into rental apartments, and soon after renters moved in, they reported hearing footsteps and moans from the bedroom where Laddle died. In 1985, new owners bought the house and opened the bedroom, and it still contained the bottle of cyanide in a closet. The house changed owners twice, and in 2007, Mark and Rebecca Spencer purchased the Allen House and had a complete paranormal investigation done in 2008 because of the endless unexplainable instances. The investigators recorded over 40 voice phenomena and had their own paranormal experiences throughout their investigation. On August 22, 2009, Laddle's love letters were discovered in the attic floor. Over 90 letters detail her 1948 love affair, which ended with her taking her own life on Christmas night. After the owner Mark had experienced endless amounts of paranormal activity and discovering Laddle's love letters, he wrote a book called A Haunted Love Story. Nowadays, the home can be booked for tours explaining the history and the paranormal activity that goes on in the Allen House. During the Halloween season, it's open to the public from 6 to 11 p.m. for tours, and paranormal investigators and ghost lovers flock to hopefully experience Laddle's ghost that haunts the house to this day. In at number 2, we have Clayton House. The Clayton House is a historical treasure, but it's also one of the most haunted places in Arkansas. The home was originally built in 1852 by a man known as Mr. Sutton, and several years later, William Henry Harrison Clayton purchased the house and renovated it, doubling it in size, transforming the style into Victorian Gothic Italianate. Mr. Clayton lived here from 1882 to 1897 with his wife along with their 7 children. The home still has old portraits of William and his wife Florence hanging on the wall, and still had numerous priceless family belongings in the home. William had a twin brother, John K. Clayton, who was a US senator who had been mysteriously assassinated in 1873, and many believe his ghost is one that haunts the Clayton house. The second floor bedroom seems to have the most activity, and staff and visitors have reported hearing footsteps, boots stomping, and doors slamming, along with seeing apparitions. Music and singing have also been heard throughout the house. People who have visited this home have described seeing one ghostly apparition known as the Tall Man, who is dressed in all black, wears a hat, and walks angrily around. Another spirit often seen around the Clayton property is described as the woman in the brown dress. The woman is said to be peaceful and often just stands in one spot quite still. She is believed to be either Mrs. Clayton or possibly a nurse from the time the property was a hospital. The home became abandoned during the Civil War before it transformed into a Union Army hospital. There was a carpenter in 2007 who was doing some repairs on the home and took pictures before it started working, and when the pictures were developed, there was what appeared to be a woman in one of them. The home is now listed on the National Registry of Historic Places and holds tours of the home explaining the history and ghost stories. And finally, in at number 1, we have Crescent Hotel. The Crescent Hotel was built in 1886 and can be found in Eureka Springs. Due to the rich history, it has hundreds of tales of paranormal experiences and ghost sightings sightings. The hotel has previously served as both a private girls' college and a cancer hospital, where Dr. Norman Baker claimed to have the cure for cancer. There are so many stories of ghost sightings, starting in room 218 where Michael, an Irish stonemason, who fell to his death when building the hotel. He's known to hang out in this room and is often seen. Theodora, a cancer patient who is known to be seen fumbling for her keys outside room 419, as well as tidying up for guests when they leave the room. Brecky, who passed away in the hotel, has been seen throughout the hotel, often bouncing a ball. Dr. John Fremont Ellis, the hotel's former in-house doctor in the 19th century, is often seen, or his cherry pipe tobacco is smelled near his former office, which is now room 212. Even the famed hotel cat Morris, who had been buried on the hotel property, is regularly seen and heard. A recurring phenomenon happens at a specific spot on the 3rd floor, where the hotel connects to an annex built onto the hotel when it was a hospital. The area has been said to be a portal to the other side. There have been multiple guests who have grown faint, with a few passing out frequently. Guests turning pale and falling against the wall and then sliding down. Many paranormal investigators believe that limestone has a special ability to absorb and release electromagnetic and psychic energies. Crescent Mountain, the hilltop the hotel sits on, is predominantly limestone. The massive thick stones used for the body of the hotel were also made of limestone, and these factors may contribute to the amount of paranormal activity the hotel guests experience. The Crescent Hotel is dubbed America's Most Haunted Hotel and has been on many TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Witness. There have been an abundance of extraordinary experiences and have attracted the attention of paranormal investigators to study and research the hotel's supernatural activity. The hotel offers daily ghost tours to learn more about the ghost stories, sightings, and the history of the hotel. Coming in at number 5, Silverbow Inn Bed and Breakfast. The Silverbow Bed and Breakfast is located in Juneau, which is the capital city of Alaska. The inn is more famously known for its bakery that was founded in 1898 by the original owner Gus Messerschmidt. This is the oldest bakery in Alaska, and some say it is the best. Although people travel from far to taste the treats and the bakers, there are reports of paranormal activity in the inn above. The original owner and founder of the inn reportedly still haunts the premises. The story goes that the owner loved his bakery and inn. He spent his whole life dedicated to creating the finest bakery. From the day it was built, he spent all of his time here. He loved welcoming the customers and ensuring everyone enjoyed their stay. Inevitably, having spent all of his time at the inn, he was here when he passed away in 1938. He was so dedicated in life, it seems his soul was tethered to the place in death. Since he passed away, guests of the bakery and inn have reported a lot of paranormal activity. The most commonly reported sighting is of Gus opening his shop early in the morning. People have seen a figure matching his description walking around the halls as he once did to prepare for his day. This is not the only thing that guests have noticed. Some people have reported knocking on their bathroom door. When they go to investigate who it is, there is no one there, but they have a feeling of being watched. Many believe this is Gus checking up on the guests. He also wanted to ensure everyone staying there was happy, and people believe this is a sign that he's still checking in on the guests today. Coming in at number 4, the Hotel Captain Cook. The Hotel Captain Cook, located in Anchorage, is notorious for its paranormal spirit, which has been nicknamed the White Lady. People often take ghost tours of the hotel, hopeful of a chance to meet this famous spirit. Although the origins of the ghost are mostly unknown, from her behavior it appears she passed away in the women's bathroom, or at least in the area which may have been home to something else before the hotel was built. The locals explain how she is bound to this place and is unable to pass on. She could possibly be cursed, as she seems distressed about her situation. Since the hotel opened, there was a lot of paranormal behavior in the area. She would break the glass of the mirrors in the ladies' bathroom or swing open the doors to scare those inside. The hotel management had to step in when one guest used the bathroom stall located at the very end of the ladies' room. While in the stall, she felt something fall around her neck and start to get tighter and tighter. The woman panicked and ran from the stall. As soon as she left the cubicle, the sensation stopped. Since then, the bathroom has been bolted shut as to stop this from happening to anyone else. She does seem to be mostly contained to this stall, but there are still paranormal happenings. Lights turn on and off on their own. No one has been hurt since the spirit was locked away, but I would still stay far away from this hotel. Unless you're looking for an angry spirit, this is a hotel that should not be on your list of destinations to visit. Although, my parents were there and it's fine, you know. They're Gucci gang. Coming in at number 3, we have the Golden North Hotel. The Skagway Golden North Hotel may look like a classic hotel located on the main street, but it has seen tragedy and has the ghost to prove it. People say this place is haunted by a lady who passed away many years ago. She is bound to room 23 on the 3rd floor, but her presence can be felt in the area around the building. The locals tell the story of how this woman became bound to room 23. It's unknown in what year the story takes place, but it was many years ago. The woman was visiting the hotel with her husband. They visited the area so her husband could go on a gold expedition. The expedition was over a number of days to possibly weeks, and the wife was to stay at the hotel and explore the local area. The day arrived and the husband left on his expedition, leaving his wife alone. Not long after the husband had left, the woman caught pneumonia. She became sicker and sicker. There was no one in the area able to help her. She had no way to get to a local doctor with no knowledge of the area. She sadly passed away in little over a week due to her illness. When her husband returned, he was heartbroken to find his wife had passed. She had been laying in their room for weeks awaiting his return. The locals were shocked to hear what happened, and horrified no one had heard her cries and helped her survive her ailment. Since then, she has been bound to the room. Other guests have heard sounds coming from the room which remains empty. The spirit can be heard coughing or choking. Some have said they saw her from the window of the hotel when walking around the area late at night. Some have even heard her cries for her husband. When anyone tries to investigate the room, they just find it empty and cold. The cold of the room takes over you as soon as you open the door. You can feel you are in the presence of a spirit and are overcome with sadness. Coming in at number 2, we have Independence Mine. The Independence Mine, now known as the Independence Mine State Historic Park, is the site of a former gold mining operation. It is located in Palmer, Alaska. The mining history in the area dates back to at least 1897. The mining town now sits abandoned. The operations were temporarily halted in 1950 with the plan to eventually resume operations. They were never able to resume the operations. This resulted in a well-preserved collection of mining equipment and buildings. Although weather has taken its toll, many of the buildings still stand today. As we know, with many mines, there are often accidents due to the dangerous nature of the work. Parts of the mine would often collapse. The mine is now a big tourist site as a look into the life and work of miners in 1897. The visitors have reported a lot of paranormal activity while touring the facility. Almost everyone who visits the mine sees some form of activity there. There are many apparitions that appear. They walk around the mine as if they were doing their usual day's work. Some have even seen cigar smoke coming from certain locations. You can smell and see the smoke, but there are no cigars in the area that could be making the smoke. Tour guides have noted that they often have the feeling of being followed. They can feel themselves being watched each time they tour the facility. Some have even found footprints that don't belong to them or anyone in their group. Although there is a lot of paranormal activity in the area, tourists still come to see the remains of the mining town. The ghosts seem to be well intended. They may merely be echoes through time of the souls who passed here. As far as we know, there have not been any visitors who have been hurt during their visit. I would still be wary of visiting here though. Finally, in at number 1, we have At the White House. At the White House was built in 1902 and is now on the National Historic Register due to how long it has been standing in the community. It has had many issues since it was built. It was originally built as a hospital, then it was used as a daycare center, and today is used as a hotel. Any building that was used as a historic hospital has seen a lot of tragic passings. When the building was used as a daycare center, there was a tragic fire. The building caught fire in the 1980s. It was fully restored following this. During the fire, the young woman who owned and ran the daycare was trapped inside. After ensuring all of the children were safe, she became trapped and unfortunately perished. Since the fire, her apparition has appeared around the home. Most guests believe her to be a kind spirit, but she does bring on the feeling of dread and terror when she is in your presence. Guests at the hotel have claimed to be startled awake by the young woman standing at the foot of the bed. Once they wake up and become frightened, the spirit usually disappears. Workers at the hotel claim that she appears to show more interest in families with children. She reportedly had a love for looking after children, and even in death she wanted to ensure their safety during their stay at the hotel. It is unknown what room she was trapped in during the tragic fire, but there are numerous cold spots around the hotel. Others have heard faint screams and cries coming from certain rooms. She is hailed as a hero for saving all of the children during the fire, but guests are still frightened when greeted by her ghost in the early hours of the morning. Coming in at number 5, we have Westmark Fairbanks Hotel. Starting off with the Westmark Fairbanks Hotel Hotel, located in downtown Fairbanks, Alaska. This is considered to be the finest hotel in Fairbanks. It was built by the former governor Walter Hickel in 1987, but has gone through some transformations over the years, but is still considered to be a go-to stay for couples, families, and business professionals. Not only is it a hub for tourists to stay, it also intrigues paranormal investigators who believe this hotel is indeed haunted. According to locals around the area, they have claimed to see an apparition-like figure that resembles a huge man that spends the night in room 277. He likes to make himself known by pushing the beds, poking guests in the shoulder, and even ruffling up the carpets in the room. Another ghost that is often seen at the hotel is that of a little girl who is seen roaming up and down the hallways, and sometimes she is heard laughing. Also, an apparition of a male often appears in the elevator or walks around the main entrance of the hotel. Guests who have stayed at the hotel have also claimed to have seen doors opening and closing on their own. Many paranormal investigators and enthusiasts are currently exploring this so-called haunted hotel, so more about their findings should come out in the near future. So if you plan on exploring this haunted hotel, please proceed with caution and get on the internet and share your findings to other ghost enthusiasts. Coming in at number 4, we have Gakona Lodge and Trading Post. Gakona Lodge and Trading Post is located in the Cooper River Valley in south central Alaska and is the oldest roadhouse in operation in the whole state. So you know that it has a lot of history and stories from locals and people who've stayed at the lodge. Jim Doyle built the lodge, an ice house and a storage shed in 1904 and was named Doyle's Roadhouse. The original buildings still exist on the property today but are no longer in use. Before selling the lodge in 1912, there are rumors that a notorious serial killer known as the Blueberry Kid even stayed at the lodge. Between the selling of the lodge in 1912 to about 1920, the lodge went through many different owners until a Norwegian man and his wife bought it, until selling it once again in 1976 to Jerry and Barbara Strang, who were among the first owners to report paranormal activity on the property. Barbara had a strange event happen when some of the kitchen workers had actually tried to contact a spirit in the lodge when the power just suddenly went out. Yes, the power did sometimes go out in the lodge because of the harsh weather, but Barbara definitely believes that this time it was in fact the work of the paranormal. Another story is about a man named John Paulson who would frequent the lodge not only as a customer but also a business partner as well. John always stayed in room number 5, and to this day people report hearing stomping coming from that particular room. John was an avid smoker, and stories from people that stay at the lodge today say they can always smell tobacco coming from room 5, even though there has been a no smoking policy at the lodge for almost a decade now. If you are brave enough to visit this paranormal lodge, you could even ask to stay in room 5 and maybe be able to hear the stomps and smell the tobacco. Coming in at number 3, we have Van Gelder Hotel. This is another hotel on our list, and it's the Van Gelder Hotel, which is another very old building known for paranormal activity due to the many people who have visited and even locals. The hotel was built in 1916 in downtown Seward, Alaska. It originally was built as an office building but then was converted into apartment buildings and then finally into a hotel. The hotel hasn't changed much since when it was built, just small touch-ups and interior changes have been done to keep the authentic feel of this very old hotel. The most popular ghost story from this hotel is that of Fanny Guthrie Bayham, a woman who died in this hotel in the 1950s and is said to haunt room 202. She is described as a younger woman who has long blonde hair and wears a blue dress. Fanny is one of many ghosts that haunt the hotel, but the only one that can actually be identified. It is believed that Fanny was shot in the head by her drunk husband one night, and she still roams this hotel to this day. An eyewitness account who was staying at the hotel in 2001 remembers that one night at 1:21 a.m. she was awoken to the whole building shaking and heard someone running up and down the stairs. The guest then asks a worker at the hotel if there was just an earthquake, to which the worker told her no. The customer had actually experienced the ghost of Fanny reliving her murder. Along with Fanny, there have been sightings of a lone, unidentifiable man who is said to appear only as wisps and orbs, as well as sightings of 2 men wearing bowler hats and can be seen standing behind the front desk, and also 3 children can be seen running from room to room, giggling when there are no guests staying at the hotel. If I were you, I would avoid staying at this place at all costs. Wish I knew where this hotel was. I stayed at a hotel in Seward, Alaska with my family once. We had a weird situation, but it was just us. We were just the weird ones. We went fishing. We were fishing all day, getting rockfish. We're out in the waters. And then we went back to the hotel we were staying at, and we had planned to go out for dinner, but we were like, let's just take a light nap. And we all woke up at like 2-3 a.m. in our coats, jackets, like, it was like, it was f***ing weird, like, Coming in at number 2 with Tonsina River Lodge. Next on this list is the Tonsina River Lodge, which is located in Tonsino, Alaska, and is part of the Copper River Valley area. The lodge is considered to be the centerpiece of Tonsina Valley. Originally named the Donaldson Roadhouse, it was built by Jim Donaldson in the 1900s, and then later in 1902, Jake Nafstad and Fred A. Martin added onto the main roadhouse building and ultimately changed the name to the Tonsina Roadhouse. Would later go under another name change, the Upper Tonsina Roadhouse, and underwent some more accommodations which could house up to 60 guests. This hotel is very historic and actually was once a brothel before it had eventually become the Tonsina River Lodge. The most popular ghost in the lodge is Charlie, who had been seen by many different workers at the lodge as well as tourists staying there. There are a few different stories of what happened to Charlie, one being that he was wanted for murder in Canada and went on the run. When authorities caught up to him, he resisted arrest and was shot and died in room 18. Another account says that Charlie got rejected from his love interest and having nothing to live for, he ended up taking his own life in room 18. And to this day he is seen wandering up and down the hallways looking for his beloved. A third version about Charlie is that during the Great Depression, Charlie was living in Seattle, and not being able to find work, he boarded a ship and decided to go to Alaska, eventually making his way to Tonsina and getting a job at the Roadhouse. He really enjoyed his job, but unfortunately Charlie ended up passing away in room 18. His body was buried on a hill behind the Roadhouse. People believe that Charlie was so happy with his life at the lodge, even in his afterlife, he never left. Many people who have come in contact with Charlie say that he is a very friendly and peaceful ghost, and workers and tourists say they were not feared by Charlie's. So if you're intrigued by Charlie and his story, you can go visit Tonsina, Alaska and stay in his old room. And finally, coming in at number 1, Hilton Anchorage Hotel. The Hilton Anchorage Hotel is considered to be a very famous place in the United States. Located in downtown Anchorage in 1916, it was first owned by Frank Reed. Many ghosts have come to stay in this hotel since the gold rush and have never left. One ghost that frequents the hotel is the first chief of police in Anchorage, who often is seen in the night hours around the hotel. The story says that he was shot during the Prohibition days with his own in the alleyway of the hotel, was then dragged into the hotel to try to recover from his wounds, but would soon pass away there. Another ghost that is often seen roaming the hotel is a bride. Many visitors have seen her tall silhouette, dressed in white in dark hallways and mirrors throughout the hotel during the evening hours, as well as the ghost of a little boy roaming the halls of the hotel. Guests who have stayed at the hotel have reported frequent ghost sightings in various rooms such as 217, 215, 205 and 202. Over the many years there have been so many ghost sightings at this particular hotel that the hotel even keeps a log at the front desk of all the eerie experiences that have happened to guests and workers. The hotel has truly survived the test of time after going through the 9.2 magnitude Good Friday earthquake in 1964, which is said to be the most powerful recorded earthquake in North America and the second in all of the world. But soon after this is when the paranormal accounts started flooding in. Even through all the tragedy that downtown Anchorage has gone through, this hotel has stood its ground, and in 2016 this hotel celebrated 100 years of business.
In 5th place, we have Preston Castle, also known as the Preston School of Industry in Ione. Opening in 1894 and named after state senator at the time, Edward Myers Prestonas, it was presented as an alternative to juvie, a place to send troubled boys to learn a new trade and avoid incarceration. To the general public, it quickly became known as the best reform school of its kind, where boys could grow their own food, raise livestock, learn farming trades and skills for self-preservation in the real world. Known as wards, minors under guardianship of the state, but not necessarily juvenile offenders, many boys passed from severe illnesses like tuberculosis or were simply killed by guards for reasons unknown. Records show that the initiation to the facility involved swimming through a pool filled with lye, and common discipline methods included starvation, isolation, public paddling, and lashings. A mass grave on the property contains at least 23 bodies of wards that were sent to be rehabilitated. Head housekeeper of the facility, Anna Corbin, was brutally beaten to death on February 23rd of 1950. Various students and members of the staff were suspects in her passing, but it remains unsolved. Visitors to the now landmark have reported meeting her spirit, which roams around the grounds with all the students that couldn't pass over. Physical representations of spirits at this location have included multiple slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched by a cold hand. all common pranks that are meant to terrorize and discombobulate. In fourth place, we have the Los Coches Adobe in Soledad. Before the establishment even broke ground, back when the area was used primarily for mining, over 30 miners perished in a soil collapse, and visitors to the area have since reported hearing their cries for help from the now abandoned mine shaft, while feeling pressure on their chest and back as if they were being buried alive. The adobe itself is located on the site of Highway 101, the building being originally built in 1843 to be used as lodging for workers in the area. Between 1872 and 1886, Soledad served as the terminal station for the railway that connected to San Francisco. Legend says that the owner of the inn was responsible for ending the lives of multiple folks who stayed there, especially near the end of the inn being in use, by entering the rooms as they slept and slitting their throats before stealing their riches in an attempt to keep the inn, well, afloat. Other spirits spotted on the property include, but are not limited to, a man hanging from a tree, swaying in the wind, and a woman sitting while holding a pointer stick, with her mouth moving as if she's yelling at whoever spots her. It is reported that the wall between the living and the dead is so thin here that people who have stayed in recent history reported having the walls and surroundings inside of the building changed them to match the settings of the once deadly inn before their very eyes. Those who have opted to go so far as to stay the night have often woken up with handprints on their chest or throat, a remnant of what came before. In third place, time to visit the Bodie State Historic Park. Formerly a genuine gold mining town located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Mono County, California, and now a national landmark, it is known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in the world. It is named after W.S. Bodie, first name unknown, but rumored to be either William or Waterman, discovered gold in 1859 in an area now known as Brody Bluff. He tragically passed in a snowstorm that same winter and was never present for what came to be. According to pioneer Judge McClinton, the district's name was changed from the proper spelling of B-O-D-E-Y to B-O-D-Y, body, and then a few other phonetic variations to eventually become B-O-D-I-E after a painter in the nearby boomtown of Aurora lettered a sign as such. You know, an accidental typo that stuck through history. While the output from the mine is largely insignificant in terms of mining history, the violence and early endings to lives tell a different story. A particularly harsh winter between 1878 and 1879 claimed hundreds of lives, with many others perishing from falling timber and explosions underground. Bodie as a town grew to have a reputation for violence and lawlessness, and unlike other mining camps at the time, killings were daily events. Robberies, stage holdups, and fights happened at such a frequency that no complete record could be kept. Reverend F.M. Warrington would describe the area in 1881 as a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The first of 4 mysterious fires tore through the business district in 1892, the next destroying the town mill in 1912, and yet another destroying the same mill again in 1898. The last of the unknown fires demolished most of what was left of the now ghost town in 1932, taking way too many lives too soon in the process. When the last producing mine shut down after 1945, very few people were left living in what was left of the town, and all eventually met untimely ends. One man shot his wife unprompted, and 3 other men from the town took it upon themselves to take his life for that act. According to historians, the ghost of that man would visit the 3 men after his passing, shaking his fist and appearing as if he was cursing them out. Those men soon died of mysterious diseases and illnesses. Visitors to the area have reported meeting spirits that leave them feeling suffocated, seeing doors open and close on their own, and rocking chairs that may or may not have a menacing older lady staring them down, or even the empty chair rocking on its own. Nowadays, Bodie may be a tourist destination, but if you remove anything from the land, even so little as a pebble, you'll be cursed with remorse and tragedy. The park keeps a logbook of all letters and items returned to them, with each thief writing an apology note to Brody for what was taken. The curse is upheld by the ghosts of residents past who guard against thieves and protect the town's treasures. Coming in second place, we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, which was renamed to the Stay on Main in 2011. Cited as one of the inspirations for American Horror Story, Hotel, its history includes multiple deaths by a single hand and more unexplainable horrors. The first documented end of life at the Cecil occurred on the evening of January 22, 1927, when Percy Ormond Cook, age 52 at the time, shot himself in the head while inside his hotel room after spending over $40,000 in an attempt to woo back his estranged wife and an attempt to buy happiness. The next death that was reported was in 1931 when a guest, W.K. Norton, passed in his room after taking poison capsules. Too many lives to list were self-taken at the height of the Great Depression in the 40s and 50s. In 1947, it was claimed that Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia, was spotted at the hotel days before her gruesome and unsolved end of time. On the topic of unsolved deaths, we move ahead to 1964, when a retired telemarketer named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, who had been a well-known long-term resident at the hotel, was found brutally ended in her room, with said room having been ransacked. In the 1980s, the hotel was home for a few weeks to repeated ender of lives Richard Ramirez, nicknamed the Night Stalker. It's assumed that he engaged in most, if not all, of his killing spree while staying there, being convicted of 13 deaths total in 1989. A copycat of his, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the Cecil in 1991 and was responsible for the strangulation and death of at least 3 women of the night. The most recent death reported took place in 2013, when surveillance footage of Canadian student Elisa Lam behaving erratically in the hotel's elevator went viral. The video depicts Lam repeatedly pressing the elevator's buttons, walking in and out of the elevator, and was recorded shortly before her disappearance. After 19 days of being missing, her naked body was discovered in a water supply cistern on the hotel roof, following complaints from guests of odd-tasting water and low pressure. And finally, in first place, we have the famed Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. It all began in 1881, when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband, William Winchester, of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company, passed away in quick succession, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, which would amount to roughly $561.6 million today, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, a combination of an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced her to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle, and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignafo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 16 times. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive. The 7-story tower and most of the chimneys collapsed. An entire wing was destroyed, along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes that were protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms, and at this time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched.